Welcome to Center Stage, the documentary podcast. Each week, our group of intrepid researchers and music archivists dig through the record crates of the world, looking for that one artist to take center stage. Using a patent-pending algorithm and spirited debate, we pick one artist. Once that is settled, we invite that artist into Thunderlove Studio to chat with your hosts Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun. When we're lucky, they say yes. Our mission with Center Stage is simple: to make sure the recorded work of artists remains, or in some cases lands on, the cultural radar. We invite you to sit back and relax. Thank you for joining us.
You should be labeled with a skull and crossbones, 'cause you're a jinx to my soul. You should be labeled with a skull and a crossbones, 'cause you're a jinx to my soul.
We can argue what band is truly ground zero for the modern Americana movement. For me, that artist has always been Lone Justice. They may not have been the first, but they were the first to bring this unique sound to a wider audience. It's safe to say that Lone Justice cast a very long shadow. And with the release of Viva Lone Justice, they stand at the precipice of reaching an even larger audience. For reasons they each explain, this may not be a new album. You can safely consider it a new-to-you album. With the help of Fire Records, we were able to arrange interviews with the three surviving members of Lone Justice: Maria McKee, Ryan Hedgecock, and Marvin Etzioni. Each were gracious with their time and their stories about the legacy of the band. Broken into three separate interviews, what follows is my conversation with bass player and repeat visitor to Thunderlove Studio, Marvin Etzioni. I hope you enjoy it. Speaking of getting the ball rolling.
Yes, sir.
Get the ball rolling. Congratulations. New Lone Justice music.
Yeah.
Finally.
Can you
That's
believe
terrific.
it? Another overnight sensation.
It took 35 plus years to do it, but sure.
Yeah. No rush.
Now, the record for me oozes with cool. You cover everything from like traditional songs. You're all over the place, which is a good thing, to traditional country, to hillbilly, to punk, to rock. It feels like a fully realized Lone Justice album. Does it feel the same for you guys?
Yeah, that's kind of what we were going for. I think what happened was the backstories that I found, what I would just call archive tapes, quarter-inch reels, where you can't remix anything. And I found like 2-3 hours worth, and I assembled an album. And I gave it to Maria, and she said, after listening to it, she said, why don't we get Ryan on it to sing and play and call it a Lone Justice album and make it more fully realized? And then I sent the tracks to Ryan. He liked what he heard. Then the two of us got together, my friend's studio. My friend Adam Pike has a studio in Pasadena. And we just kind of acted as if, Lone Justice today, right now. And so Ryan started singing, he was playing, we'd sing together. It's just, let's add strings to a song. And then I'd say, I love that guitar part. How about if we double it with a horn section? And, we took it to that next level. And as you say, made a fully realized album, which I think we're all excited about,
With good reason. Now, you said that you found the tapes. So when can we say the origin of some of the raw data is? Some of
the recordings were done when I was working with Marie on her second solo album, Sin It Gets Saved. And in the living room, actually, where I'm sitting, at that time, for a little while, an engineer friend of mine, David Vaught, he had a studio here. So we had a large Flickager board, and he had a 2-inch 16 track Ampex and a Revox 1/4 inch and his KLH monitors. And anyway, so, Maria and Heffington, Tammy Rogers, myself, Benmont, and we'd all just kind of hang out, and whoever was there, we just put up mics, and I'd look at Dave, put on another reel of tape, and I give him a cue, like, let's record this one. And we didn't have a song list. We weren't really making a record, We were just having a great time, just recording. And Maria says, "Oh, let's try this song." And then all of a sudden we're playing this song, and it was very, very spontaneous. And then once Ryan and I got in the studio, I found another track and he found something. All of a sudden the record started to expand into something that was not just, home recordings, So I'm really excited about the outcome, and knock on wood, we're getting a very positive response, and it's really nice.
Yeah. Now You Possess Me opens the album.
Yeah.
That's a Marvin song, am I right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
That's a beautiful song.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I wrote that song for my son when he was born. And
really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I have found a place in the circle of your arms. My world is now safe from the sirens and alarms. You possess me. You possess me like no one ever has, like no one ever will. I look in your eyes.
So that was really the song that kind of reunited Maria and I to work together on her second album when she heard that song. And something unusual happened. We got together and she said, "Let's record that song." So we went into a little studio and recorded it. And I told the engineer something that I never do. I said to the engineer, "Hey, give me a mix just of her vocal." He goes, "Okay." So he gives me a little DAT tape, DAT, DAT tape, like this big. I put it in my pocket. And then while we're working on the record, I found this box and it said 1992 DAT tapes. And I open it up and on top is Maria, You Possess Me, vocal. I went, "Oh." So what happened is that I had been playing that song at certain gigs live with a string quartet. And so I sent the string arrangement to my friend Tammy Rogers. I said, just add strings, a string quartet, and then double it with a mandolin quartet, because I had that sound in my head for a long time. And she said, "I can do that." And so that's what's on the record. She sent it in, then Pike mixed it. He played me his first mix. I said, "I think we're done." And then, I played it for Ryan. He loved it. And I said, "Could be an opener." He says, "Yeah, it could be." And then I played the album for Maria with that sequence. She loved opening with it. She felt very cinematic, like the beginning of a movie or something. She described it,
Yeah. From there, you go into Jenny Jenkins.
Yeah.
Which is just foot stomping fun.
Yeah.
What's the story of that song and how did it end up here?
I would give credit to Ryan and to Maria as well. Ryan, that was really Ryan's baby. He really had a vision for that song. He had already recorded. That was one of the 2 tracks on the record that was done on multi-track. So he came into the studio and he had the recording with him, and he was playing guitar, and Maria's singing with him, and then she's playing that electric rhythm, which is great, and Heffington on drums. And so I added bass, kind of giving it a Lone Justice kind of feel, with Heffington. And then we spent some time mixing it. And, Ryan's really into finding songs and rearranging them and turning them into something other than what they were, which I think is great. And that became a key track on the record.
Let's talk about Mr. Heffington, who has since passed.
Yeah.
What was it like revisiting that, hearing him again?
Well, Don's always with me. I mean, Don used to stay at my house. He used to sleep on my couch, and he was like in between things in life.
Oh, wow.
So we were very close. He wasn't just like, oh, yeah, I was a drummer I played with in a band. I mean, we were very close. He called me from the hospital. We spoke a lot on his final days. And, Don was a one-off. His idol was Kenny Buttrey, who played with Dylan and Neil Young. That was like, if you want to know Don's North Star, was Kenny Buttrey. And he loved jazz. He loved Dylan and jazz, Coltrane, Miles. And, and he had a love for country music, so it was it was great to work with him, in Lone Justice and post Lone Justice. We did gigs together. He would play on my stuff. He'd play me songs that he had written, and I miss him dearly. It was very kind of, irreplaceable.
You had a great quote from a Variety article in 2021 where you said that he didn't play the drums, he played songs, like Ringo.
Yeah, well, that's my favorite drummers. That's how they played drums. They didn't play drum; they played the songs. I think Ringo, I can't say he invented that, but he certainly was in the greatest song band, or at least one of the greatest song bands of all time, and he played the songs. So that was always where I was coming from, working with Don. He knew, he had a songwriter's ear. He did, because he was also a writer and a songwriter. So he understood. He could play acoustic guitar. He understood what the singer, what the songwriter was doing. He just didn't understand drums, and I love drums, so we spoke each other's language. I'll tell you something. The first time I met Don was in 1983. A friend of mine, Steve Fischel, who was the pedal steel player for Emmylou Harris's band, the Hot Band. And we were at a club, and he said, "Marvin, come here. I want you to meet a friend of mine. It's Don Heffington." I mean, Don and I hit it off like that. And I knew at that moment I had never heard him play. I never saw him hold a set of drumsticks. And I thought, that's the drummer for Lone Justice. I'd never heard him before. And so I told Ryan and Maria about him. And they go, "No, we can't kick out our drummer." I said, "Just give him a shot. Give him one rehearsal. If you don't like him, let it go." And I said all this without having heard him.
Wow.
Finally, they agreed. "All right, Marvin, we'll do you a favor." So we set up a rehearsal. And the first song, we said, "Well, let's try Sweet Jane," because he loved the Velvets. We loved the Velvets. And he counted it off. And I felt like, all of a sudden, the whole band was elevated. Like, it was like, whoa. Hey, we're pretty good now. It changed everything. There's a quote by McCartney. He said the first time he played with Ringo, it was like, "Yeah, we're a pretty good band." He turned around, and I really had that feeling. I'll never forget that time of playing with him. And I used to sit, when I was playing bass, in the band. I used to sit on the floor in rehearsals with my back against his kick drum, and he's pounding it like that. But I wanted to feel where the groove was when I was playing with him, So,
Wow.
and so I can still feel like the wood, of the kick drum in my back. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of a great thing that we'd met, and he introduced me to David Vaught, an engineer that I worked with for decades. He introduced me to Tammy Rogers, who's all over the Texas record,
Yes.
So Don and I had a very special friendship, and he surrounded himself with like-minded people who cared about music and songs and making records, and that was his life,
Yeah. And Tammy Rogers, wow, what a fun, she's fantastic. And she is on the record. Yeah.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. I mean, and again, all her harmonies that she sings on the record were cut live when Maria was here, so none of her except for the more string arrangements, that she's a part of, but the more fiddle kind of playing, the live solos and all of her harmony vocals, that's all cut live with Maria, and it wasn't thought out at all. I mean, she has that ear, harmony ear. She has that innate ability, Tammy, to imitate your phrasing to the point where you think it's you singing along with yourself. That's how deep she can get when she sings with someone.
But if you'll excuse me now.
Oh? Why?
Why, I'd like to go up to my room for a moment.
To call up that girlfriend of yours again? Sit down.
All right. So you said the other multi-track was Teenage Kicks.
Yeah, Teenage Kicks was recorded 2-in-16 track at 15 IPS for those who care. And we did a mix on quarter-inch tape. And at the time I mastered it. The original recording was me, Marie, and Heffington. And then I mastered it with Bernie Grum, and I told him I really wanted it very in your face, very aggressive sounding, So I really liked how he mastered it. So I held on to that tape for years. And then I played it for Ryan, and he had a guitar line he wanted to add to it. Then we added some vocals to it. He sang on it as well. So it was really fun and exciting, to take that one to the next level as well with Ryan.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great cover of the song.
Yeah. That was Maria's idea to record that.
No
song.
kidding.
Yeah, she was into that. We were all into it, but I remember she brought the song in. Yeah.
It gives. So if you're familiar with the John Cameron Mitchell show that's on Broadway, Hedwig and the Angry Inch, Bob
I saw
Mould,
that at the Roxy in LA.
Yeah, Bob Mould did a lot of the guitar work on the original, and it just it brought that Husker Du punk edge, and I got that same energy from Teenage Kicks. It was great.
Well, I'm a big I played the bass, but I also played the electric rhythm on it, and I'm a huge Johnny Thunders fan of the Dolls. I'd seen, so it's all part of the same spirit of playing. It's just you're just on it's just about high energy, drive and relentlessness in your playing. So that was the point of view. Husker Du. I mean, it to me, it's all coming from that same heart of playing.
Speaking of high energy, Rattlesnake Mama.
Oh yeah. Well, Rattlesnake Mama, that was a song Lone Justice used to play every single show from 83 on. I mean, we played it all the time. It was great. And in this take, it was more acoustic, which I thought was great. She just started playing it. And then when we went to work with Ryan, it was his idea as kind of an homage to Heffington, because Heffington played drums and percussion, but he also played auto harp. So Ryan said, "You know what? Let me get an auto harp, and I'll add that to it." It's like as if Don was playing it. I said, oh, it'd be great. So he got an auto harp, and we added that. And it was really like, it just lifted the energy of the song up. It just took all this room because he was playing it like a big rhythm guitar. You know what I mean? So instead of having 6 strings, he's playing it where he's got 20 plus strings. He's racking the hell out. It was really great. It really added a lot of soul and energy to the song.
And it's got that in spades.
Yeah.
Love that tune. Love that.
Yeah, it's great.
Would love to have heard it live back in the day, but I'll have to settle for this.
Yeah, well, the live track on the record is "Nothing Can Stop My Loving You."
Right.
A George Jones,
Roger
Miller. That's undoctored. That's right off the board. And our roadie at the time probably just pushed record on a cassette or something. And so he had sent it to us. And I said, well, that's got to be on the record. And so that's the only time we ever played with Joel Saunier, the accordion player.
Okay.
I mean, he didn't play the whole gig. He only played on that one song at that one gig. And that's why I wanted to make sure it was on the record, because that never happened before or after. There are other versions of Lone Justice recording and playing that song, but that's the only one with Saunier. So I was really excited that we found that. And whatever imperfections are in there, it was like, I didn't want to doctor it up or clean it up or make it perfect. We left it raw as it is. So, but that's really what it felt like in to see us in the heyday. Yeah.
Do you remember where that was recorded?
Yeah, that was at the Palace. That was in 1984, before the first Lone Justice album. I remember that night because we had sold out the Palace, so we didn't have a record out yet. That's how heavy the anticipation was for the album in LA.
That's pretty impressive. Pretty intense.
Yeah, it was intense. Yeah, it was a great night. Very memorable. Yeah.
What about Wade in the Water?
Yeah.
I
want to say Maria brought it in. I didn't know the song, but I loved it, and I love the song. It's one of my favorites. Again, Ryan added vocals, and I think he probably put some guitar on it. And and what I really like about it vocally, it's one of the few songs on the record where Maria and Tammy are singing, and then we have other sections with Ryan and I singing. When I really like that, we don't sound like the Mamas and Papas, but I do love 2 male and 2 female voices on records. I love that. So I'm glad that we had the opportunity to take the song again to that next level, with Ryan being a part of it all.
Yeah, and now Skull and Crossbones.
Yeah,
that's a personal favorite for obvious reasons.
What's that?
I said that's a personal favorite for obvious reasons. I love Skulls.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, then you have found your theme song. I think the person who wrote it was a woman named Barbara Moore, or I think it's a 50s song, if I remember right. I think Richard Thompson covered it. I don't know which version Maria heard first, but I'm pretty sure she brought that one in, and we just started playing it, and so again, it was not a anything more than, folks in a room and say, hey, let's try this song. Oh, okay, it's an E. Okay, let's try that. And then we play it, and that would be that.
Now, Alabama Baby, let me ask you this song. I did some research on this song, and was it originally done by the Andrews Sisters?
No, as far as I know, I think it's the Armstrong twins, if I remember right. Two guys. It was like a hillbilly duet.
Okay.
And guitar and mandolin. Again, I'm pretty sure Maria brought it in. I'm not 100% sure because it was a while ago. And so I'm just taking a guess that I'm pretty sure that that's something. I remember her liking the Armstrong twins for some reason, like she had an album by them, if I remember right. And it was, they were like a hillbilly duet.
Okay.
So I think that they were, I don't know anything about the Andrews Sisters doing it, but
now it's a bold move in covering Dolly Parton's "I Will Always Love You."
Well, we did not set out to cover the song. I mean, if we were making a record, we would have never put it on a record. But what happened was I found a take of it, and in the middle of the take, Maria stops the song and then she picks it up. So I had to create an edit to get one take, and that's it. There's only one take of it. It was almost like, let's do this the way it was meant to be done. Because probably I could have the time wrong, but I have a feeling that maybe the Whitney version was kind of on the airwaves, and we were much more into Dolly, the original source of the song. So, and so once I heard the take and played it for Ryan, he was like, boy, it'd be nice to get like an orchestra of strings at the end, And so I said, you should talk to Tammy. I think she can make that work for you. So she did. And then I brought in Greg Leese for a session, and he played the pedal steel against her strings. And usually when you do overdubs like that, you usually want to put the pedal steel first and then the strings, but I did it the other way. But Greg and I know each other well enough that I knew he'd be able to make it work, So, Dolly saw us in '83.
I was going to say, there's a famous story about her seeing you.
Yeah, she was a fan, very supportive, wonderful, just really, it was like, she was like a walking light bulb to me, just like high energy, really, just really, really great person. I really liked her very much. And so when we did that song, there, like I said, under normal circumstances, if you're making a record, you kind of have a roadmap of what you're going to do that day, that week. You've rehearsed it. You've played the songs live. You're kind of setting yourself for making a record. In this case, it was the complete opposite. We had never played the song before, never heard Maria sing the song. And then she starts singing it, and thank God the tape was rolling. Under any other circumstance, that would have never been released, And, and due credit to Maria that I'll put her vocal against Dolly's. God bless her. You know what I mean?
I'm glad you said that, Marvin, because I don't have to be the guy that goes out on a ledge and says it myself.
I don't mind, because I'm in the band. I was there for it, but she's like family to me. She's like a little sister to me. And, when it's time to sing someone's praises, I'll do it. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, there's no one in her league, and she can stand, her vocal on that stands next to Dolly's, from my perspective. Mm-hmm. But if you'd rather do Dolly, that's okay with me too, because that's the original. You can't top the original. It's impossible. Dolly that's the source. That's the source. But we weren't. The whole point I'm really making is that we weren't trying to do anything. We weren't trying to top. We weren't trying, oh, this is going to be the. It wasn't like that at all. It was just like that moment just came out of Maria's soul, and we just happened to have the mics on, That's all. It's really that simple. There's nothing. This is not a clever album. It's a lot of heart. It's not the stuff above the eyebrows. It's the stuff that's really in here. How this is really put together.
The song serves as a nice glue piece, I think, because Maria's talent, I think you can put in that same stratosphere with a Dolly.
I would. I think I'm not the only one, but I agree with that.
Yeah, I think you hear it all over the record, and so to have it sort of validated, and I Will Always Love You comes at track 9. It's late in the record, so it's you've had this journey with her as a vocalist, as a talent. It kind of brings it home in a fun way.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is that the next song on the record is Sister Ann, which is a complete diametrically opposed record. I don't even know if Dolly's ever heard of the MC5. So,
I doubt it.
So that's really what separates Maria and Lone Justice from Dolly. And due respect to Dolly, Dolly is, one of the great, most accomplished singer-songwriters. If the only thing Dolly could do was write songs, she'd be on Mount Rushmore of songwriting, Mm-hmm. So, but everybody knows all the attributes of Dolly as an artist, as a performer, as a record maker, and, everything else. But the one thing that one of the many things I would give credit to Maria, I don't think that there's any modern singer, or really any singer, that can legitimately sing Dolly Parton and legitimately get into the spirit of the MC5. I've never heard it.
Sister Ann don't give a damn about evolution. She's a liberated woman. She's got the solution. Like a dinosaur, she's going out for war. She's gonna make it her own crusade. She got a heart of gold, gonna save her wretched soul, going down Satan's highway. She can, I know she can, I know she can. She's my sister Ann. Such truth, such beauty, such dignity. She got a halo around her head. She got the 10 Commandments tattooed on her arm. If she died, she'd rise up from the dead. She's every man's savior, more than two if you do what she says. She's saving you. She can. I know she can. I know she can. She's my sister Ann. Sister, won't you tell me why I work so hard? I used to say my prayers, baby, all night long. I hear the gospel, baby, in my ear. Come on, Sister Ann, and save me from my fear. You can. I know you can. I know you can. You're my sister Ann.
Maria could take all of these elements, and we all connected to the diversity. Ryan did, Heffington, and myself. We were all into, Dolly and Haggard and the Velvet Underground and the Stones and, Grant. Maria and Ryan were really into Graham and Emmy, and they were into X. And so we were able to very naturally infuse all of these elements under one band moniker, so to speak. But I think Maria's talents as a singer to legitimately go, I wanted it to be the most Revolver, White Album, ballsy move, going from, I didn't want to follow it just with another ballad to show, we're closing up the album nicely. It's like, what could be the most extreme, And to me, I thought, okay, let's hit it with MC5. Dolly meets MC5. You know, that is the excitement of what really makes Lone Justice work, is that, you know, that diversity and legitimacy of Maria to actually be able to take on both extreme elements, you know, but not just tackling the style, but just also in terms of technical ability. I don't think there's anyone in her league can do that. I've never heard it. It doesn't mean I don't like all these other singers we talked about.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
but fortunately, you know, I have spent many countless hours listening to the recordings on this record, working on it, and the outtakes and all this. I mean, for me, I was in heaven just getting to listen to her sing and studying her vocals and putting the sequence together. Man, that's my idea of a great time.
Let's talk a little bit about the sequencing of the songs, because to me it seems almost like a live performance, like a live performance of Lone Justice.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm really into sequencing records. That's my thing. A couple people know me for that, you know. So I actually, you know, I joke with people. It's like, yeah, I'm working on resequencing Pet Sounds. I'll take on any record, you know. I've got an idea to resequence the White Album into a single disc, you know.
Oh, please do.
Yeah. So, so the idea of the sequence, once I felt like we had You Possess Me, I thought, you know, I wanted it. Like one of my favorite albums is Revolver, and I love the White Album. I love one of the greatest, I think one of the most bold sequences ever was Taxman into Eleanor Rigby. Like, whoa, you know, you listen to the sequence on that record, there was so much diversity. You have no idea. I mean, still, here we are 60 years later, still talking about how great that album was put together. That's still the high bar for me personally. And so not necessarily thinking it could be a live set. And I appreciate that point of view, but you can get away with a little bit of murder live. But on record, it's really got to work, you know? And so I wanted to make sure that the transitions were extreme, but and also sonically, I had to do a bit of work behind the scenes to make sure that, you know, if we're going from Rattlesnake Mama to Teenage Kicks, you know, that sonically, you know, your speakers don't blow out, you know. So I had to work with. I mastered the album about 4 times before handing the final in, you know. So that was, you know, and then once we put, you know, Jenny Jenkins second, I felt like this is really. I wanted to get a Lone Justice track right up front. It's the 4 of us. And it really represented like, oh, this is where Lone Justice, if we were all in a room right now, that's probably what we would sound like. It felt very current, very alive. And, you know, I think what Ryan and Maria came up with that song was tremendous. And the fact that he had Heffington on drums, I said, well, we got to put it on the record, you know. And and also in terms of, see, we're going into Rattlesnake Mama again. You know, I was trying to get the opposites to have this ebb and flow. There are no 2 songs that are alike, you know, and then track 4 is Teenage Kicks and side 1 is Wade in the Water. So you go from these extremes of Teenage Kicks and then into a gospel song.
Yeah.
And then the side ends. And I remember playing the sequence for Maria. And I said, well, that's side 1. She goes, oh my God, that's it? That's fantastic. So I played her side 2. So I put side 2 starting with the live track, which I thought was a good spot for it. You hear Dawn count off the sticks, and you know it's like we're you know you're back into the saddle, so to speak, with Lone Justice. You know, because that really was the energy, the real pure energy. Like I said, that's an undoctored, not watered down recording of Lone Justice. You know, we didn't make it sound prettier than it was. You know, that's just what happened. And I think the next song is it not Alabama Baby? I think there's another one. before that.
Skull and Crossbones.
Skull and Crossbones. Again, same kind of song that could have we could have gone into that song next in a live set. Same with Alabama Baby. That really, those three songs in a row would have been great live. And then going into Dolly's song, I Will Always Love You, was kind of like, okay, let's bring it down, but let's go as hard as we can up, for a hard finish. The other thing is, on the original version of Sister Ann, we used to play that song, not with Lone Justice, but when I used to play with Maria in 93 during the Sinner Gets Saved. She introduced that song to me. And we played it live. I loved it. At the time, I was playing electric mandolin on it. But on this version, it features Benmont. But on the album, I think it's on the album High Time, it's the opener. If you listen to the original MC5 album, it ends with horns. Like a Salvation Army thing. So I sent the MC5 version and our version to a horn arranger friend of mine, David Rollicke, and I said, I want you to imitate the exact horn part, but I want it to be just as long. I don't care if it goes 18 times or 25 times, whatever it is, count it out. I want it to be exact length as the MC5 record. And so that's why it goes so long at the end with the horn. It's like confetti should be thrown from the ceiling, Oh,
wow.
Yeah. So if you listen to MC5, the horns actually emulate the exact amount of times. We tried fading it out. Normally you'd fade it after 4 or 5 times. You get the idea. I was like, fuck it. Let it go on at the end of the night. You want to turn the record off? Go do something else.
It's
a very uncompromised event.
It's a hell of a visual.
Yeah.
Now, I got a question here for you.
Yeah.
We have a following on Substack, and I had posted on there that, what I was listening to lately was a lot of Lone Justice, hint, hint.
Yeah.
And somebody had replied, oh, I love Lone Justice. I love that first record, yada, yada, yada. And I said, well, I'm in the process of arranging an interview with, Marvin, Ryan, and Maria. Yeah. He's like, oh my God, I can't wait. I was like, well, if you have a question, I'd be happy to ask it for you.
Sure.
So lo and behold, I have a question from one of our Substack readers.
Okay.
Do you think things would have been different artistically and commercially if the four of you had stayed together between the first and second album?
Well, certainly it would have been different. I think, to give maybe some insight into the question, I'll answer it in a little bit historic way. That hindsight's always 20/20. A
For
question
sure.
like it's a 20/20. Let's go back in time and reinvent history.
Right.
But we didn't. In 1983, 1984, you can hear the energy of Nothing Can Stop My Loving You. That was a band on fire. We had 2-3 albums worth of material ready to go. We didn't release an album in 83 like REM. We didn't release an album in 84. So by the time we released the first album, it was almost like being pregnant too long, So I think by the time the album was over, I think that it was a very unnatural ride. From my perspective, I think had we been able to stay together, which I was in favor of, had we been able, I had a particular vision for the second album that I think had we stayed together with the original 4-piece and so let's just make a record we want to make on our own terms. I think that would have been fun. But there were other things happening at play that that scenario didn't happen. But I think it's a good question. I just wanted to add a perspective that a couple of years earlier, what was interesting, I was talking to a friend about it today actually, and I was kind of making a parallel in time, not in terms of the kind of music we were doing, but REM put out records in '83, kind of while they were growing up in public. And they made, I think, uncompromising records in '83 in the early days. So by the time they got to their more, let's just say, more commercial sounding records, you know, their original fan base already had the early recordings, you know. And I think that's a very healthy thing for a band. Like if you're watching this and you're in a band, document and release material as you're going, or find a producer that'll help, help make that happen. I think that's a healthy thing for a band, especially. You know, some of my favorite records are the early records by a band. Like I love the first Pretenders, or the first Cheap Trick, or the first New York Dolls. You know, so by the time some artists don't last more than 2 albums, you know, first Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers is still my favorite. You know,
right?
You know, so not always the case, but there are many examples. You know, of the first Stones album. Although I'm a big, like many, love the Jimmy Miller period. You know, of Exile and Let It Bleed and all that. But the Stones started off out on fire. You know, their first album was an all covers record. And this is a great little band that got to, you know, I think Oldham did them a service by documenting what they were doing at that time and allowed them to grow up in public along the way. Their first album was not with Satisfaction.
Right.
It seemed like it, but that's not where it started. You know, so it would have been, I think, healthy in hindsight. And also I felt that even at that time, that it would have been good. Let's put out a record. You know, if you have people showing up to a club, give them what they're experiencing. And that didn't happen. And then to go back to your friend's question, you know, in '85 going into '86, I think we all had a lot of great songs that would have really made up for a great second Lone Justice album together with the original 4-piece. I think that would have been a really great thing. But I appreciate the question.
But you just made us wait almost 40 years. That's all right.
Yeah, it wasn't on purpose.
Awesome.
Jane, what can you tell me about this man you saw last night?
He's Caucasian.
Caucasian?
Yeah, you know, a white guy with a mustache, about 6'3".
An awfully big mustache.
You know, the one thing that I love about the experience of this album is that Maria loves it, Ryan loves it, I love it. You know, I in my heart, I know that Heffington would have loved it. What more is there? Everything else, like, you guys are great, you know. But if you can get the band to love it in real time, we never experienced that before. You know, this is really the first time as a band that we all, I mean, that's not what happened on the first album, you know?
Oh, wow.
So it's much more of a coming together, you know, so I think it's a very positive experience, you know. And I think the record, in a sense, has the energy that and the love that the people who are part of that record, you know, it has that, you know, in the grooves, you know. So I'm glad it's there, and I'm glad folks like yourself are into it and letting other folks know about it. And
for sure,
if anybody else in the future has a question, you know, you're always welcome to contact me, because I like, you know, as a fan, you know, to be able to ask questions of the artist. I think it enhances the experience between the listener and the record you're listening to. So just know you have access to me, you know. I mean, as a fan growing up, when I was in high school, I called Pete Townsend up at his hotel room during the Quadrophenia.
You got through? You got through?
I got through, and he answered the phone, and you know. And I said, "Hi, is Pete there?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, I said, "Oh," and I got all nervous. I said, "Hey, my name is Marvin, and I'm a songwriter, and I'm writing a piece of I'm writing a piece on you, an article for the school newspaper." He goes, "Hold on a second, I'm making a pot of tea," and I could hear a whistle in the background go on for like a minute, and about 3 minutes later, he came back. "All right, I'm ready now." And I said, "Look, Pete, I got to tell you, I'm a songwriter, but I'm not writing an article on you guys. I'm just calling as a fan. And I just wanted to talk to you about songwriting and to let you know how much I love Who Sell Out, which is my favorite. I love Quadrophenia that just came out, but Who Sell is still my favorite." And we talked for like 30, 40 minutes. And it was one of those crystallized moments in my life that it was like, okay, that's the path I want to go.
Yeah.
And The Who remains to be, one of my favorite bands. I'm a big Pete Townsend fan, and of also his solo work, as well. And I just mentioned that, like when you got the one question, I take that to heart. I think that's really significant that somebody would like to know more than maybe what they could get just from reading an article that's in print, So I encourage it. And so if you receive other questions, Keith, Joff, you guys know how to reach me.
Absolutely. Have you written a book? You sound like you got a book and you got plenty of stories.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. I mean,
okay.
I had started a book pre-COVID. A friend of mine is a great author. He wrote interviews with Tom Petty, and he also wrote a book called Songwriters on Songwriting, and he interviewed Cohen and Dylan and Joni and Paul Simon. Anyway, so as he was finishing up the Petty book, I had done a podcast that he was a part of with Louise Goffin, and he called me and goes, "Man, I really, really like your songs a lot. Could we get together?" And so he goes, I'd like to do a book with you, an interview book. So we have ours that we've done yet, but then COVID hit, and he just texted me tonight. He goes, "Yeah, we got to get back to that." So we'll see what happens, and yeah. So you never know what will happen. So it might get finished this year. It might get finished God knows when. But I if someone wants to talk to me about making records and writing songs and what that experience is like from any side of the glass, or being in a band or playing on other people's records or whatever it is, I'm happy to share information.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll be sure to spread the word.
There's also talk. This isn't official yet, but there might be a Lone Justice book, but I can't make it official yet because it's unofficial.
Oh,
it's in talking stages.
Oh, I would be remiss if I didn't ask this. There will be no tour, no live dates, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
You'd have to talk to Maria about that. But as of right now, I'm going to take a wild guess. I'm going to throw a dart in the dark and throw it against the wall and go, "Oh, it hit the answer. We're not playing live right now." So as far as I know, that's not what she wants to do right now. And I told her, I said, whatever your answer is, it will not affect our friendship. And if you're ready to do something, you let me know. If you're not, that's okay. So it was really my friendship personally. Our friendship, my friendship with Maria means more than playing shows. If she'd like to do that, we were offered to play Country Music Hall of Fame and for Americana Indie Week, and I'm sure there are other places, other opportunities. But I told her I think the most important thing is our friendship. The fact that she loves the record. If someone had told me 5-10 years ago there's going to be a Lone Justice record and Maria's going to love it, I go, "You're crazy. She's not into that anymore." But things change, people change, circumstances change. So my point of view, I live with, you never know what's going to happen Don't say never. And, and at the same time, live with the understanding is, as of tonight, I'm talking to you guys and we're not doing a show. That's reality today. That's what I got, Mr. Jeff, you're the quiet one of the two. And did you want to ask anything? I don't want to leave you out.
No, I'm great. I just want to express appreciation for the time. Marvin, I second Keith on the book, though. I mean, you could write a book just on the topic of sequencing a record.
Oh, yeah.
So, I think the stories are such that with the right editor and the right interviewer, you've probably got a gold mine there that should be shared.
All right. Well, if you want to conduct some interviews about that, you call me up. We could set it up and then transcribe them, and maybe it's a book, maybe it's a chapter. I don't know, but I'm open to that. This is how things happen. So if you want to start doing that with me, you let me know. We'll start
resequencing the White Album. We'll start there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm okay. Well, sequencing. What's really fascinating is that there's a great story I heard about sequencing, and this is secondhand, so I don't want to get sued by anybody in Springsteen's camp. But I heard a story about Springsteen, and they were sequencing one of his albums. They were in the studio, and the producers there, and the manager, and Springsteen, and they're like, "Oh, what's the next song going to be on the record?" And there's a kid in the back, and he's like the second engineer, just sitting in the back, and they go, "Guys, what's the problem? When I listen to a record, I just put it on random. It doesn't matter."
Wow.
Yeah, he got fired that night.
Deservedly so.
Yeah, deservedly so. But what's really fascinating, I was talking to a friend of mine about Abbey Road. He said that side 2 was going to be side 1.
I'd heard that somewhere.
Yeah. It's like, wow, that's interesting. So the album would have started with, Here Comes the Sun. It would have gone through all those unfinished songs of Lennon McCartney, and and then the album ends with I Want You, She's So Holy. Whoa, that's a really different experience. It's a completely different album. Still a pretty good record, but it's really different, yeah, right? Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah. So sequencing is really fascinating, and no one gets credit for it. And it should be talked more about, because I think the making of great records really do have, I think, really incredible sequences. Some of my favorite records, my God, I can't imagine the sequence being any different. It like just landed from the heavens, and that's how the record came. But someone came up with the sequence. I think of the Beatles, it was probably George Martin, but I don't know the details on every record. Probably more so the early ones, because they were playing a lot, so he probably assembled the records for release. But maybe by the time they got to Peppers, it was, I Putting Within You, Without You to start side 2 is just phenomenal. Like, to me, that's the most important song on the record. It defines psychedelia.
Try to
is significant. Yes.
Try to rearrange Dark Side of the Moon in any other way that makes sense. You can't.
Yeah. It's funny. I'm not a Pink Floyd guy. I like Pink Floyd with Sid. I don't mean to be flippant about it, but I really like the Sid era. It seemed like he was more Who influenced. Like See Emily Play was like the great Who single that never came out. So I couldn't tell you about that, but I have heard that people like that record.
It wouldn't sync up with Wizard of Oz.
That's what I've heard. Yeah,
if you resequence it.
Yeah, that's. Have you ever seen it that way? Have you ever watched it?
I have on the.
Did you
right?
put like a VHS in and then put the needle drop and?
Absolutely. I was in the right headspace for the event, and I can say that it was.
There might have been some other substances that helped with that headspace, possibly.
Marvin, I can tell you, I enjoyed myself.
Okay. we
10 out of 10.
Vote
fully
accordingly.
recommended.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
Please vote. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, Marvin, thank you for the time. It's
Hey, great. We're going to be in
always
touch
a pleasure chatting
about this and more. And
This and more.
Yeah, and later on we'll get the Holy Brothers with you, and I'll
For
get
sure.
that record. And I
other
have
bands working.
a couple of indie artists that I'm finishing up production. Can I send you some records for you to listen to?
Absolutely. Always.
That would be great. So expect that. And if there's something you want me to listen to or know about, or whatever's going on, man, I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and your support really means a lot to me and to other artists that you guys are into. So it's really great.
Thank you. Thank you. It's kind of you to say.
Yeah. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks,
we mean it, man.
All right, Marvin.
See you guys later.
See ya.
Adios. Bye.
Many thanks to Marvin for making the time to chat with us. Special thanks to Jenna Jones at Fire Records.
This episode of Centre Stage was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins and Jeff Calhoun. The show was recorded at Thunderlove Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration,
edited by
Vic Titball,
with help from
Clem Fandango.
Our theme song is Cynical by Jaguar on Mars. You can stream Jaguar on Mars wherever you stream your favorite music. The songs you heard during this podcast were Skull and Crossbones, You Possess Me, Nothing Can Stop My Loving You, and Sister Anne. All of these can be found on the new Lone Justice album, Viva Lone Justice, which is available now. You can stream Lone Justice wherever you stream your favorite music.
You should be labeled with a skull and crossbones. You're a jinx to my soul. You should be labeled with a skull and crossbones. 'Cause you're a jinx to my soul.
Act like a child, I would ever want to wild.
Then it cries and then it groans. You should be labeled with a skull and crossbones. 'Cause you're a jinx to my soul.
We can argue what band is truly ground zero for the modern Americana movement. For me, that artist has always been Lone Justice. They may not have been the first, but they were the first to bring this unique sound to a wider audience. It's safe to say that Lone Justice cast a very long shadow. And with the release of Viva Lone Justice, they stand at the precipice of reaching an even larger audience. For reasons they each explain, this may not be a new album. You can safely consider it a new to you album. With the help of Fire Records, we were able to arrange interviews with the 3 surviving members of Lone Justice: Maria McKee, Ryan Hedgecock, and Marvin Etzioni. Each were gracious with their time and their stories about the legacy of the band. Broken into 3 separate interviews, what follows is my conversation with guitar player Ryan Hedgecock. I hope you enjoy it. We're in the beginning part of autumn, so it's getting a little chillier now.
Where are you at?
I'm in New Haven, Connecticut.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I lived in Brooklyn for 10 years. I like that time of
Yeah, it's beautiful.
year.
Whereabouts in Brooklyn? I lived in Brooklyn for about 13 years.
Like right on the edge of Red Hook and Carroll Gardens.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. I got there, I think it was like 95. I moved into, there was an Italian restaurant called Ferdinando's Focacceria that was on Union Street, like right off the BQE.
Oh, wow.
And I had a place above it. I loved it. I had a studio in the basement. The place had been open since the 1890s.
Wonderful. I love that area. I love Red Hook.
Yeah. I played at a place called John's Bar down there. This guy, Sonny, he ran it. It was magical down there.
Yeah, it's a different kind of magic now.
Yeah, I'm sure. There are a lot less people, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's unaffordable. That's why I left. I was in Greenpoint and Williamsburg.
Oh, yeah. There was that. Did you know Jeremy Tepper?
No.
Yeah, he had a record label. I think it was in Williamsburg, like in the 90s.
Mm.
Yeah, did a lot of country stuff.
Yeah, everyone tries to get me to go back, but the economics of it don't make sense.
Oh, fuck yeah. that's changed a lot in the last few years, Like,
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you.
Where are you at?
I'm in California.
Okay.
Kind of close to Culver City, not far from the beach. I grew up here. I'm probably about, 15 miles from where I grew up.
Oh, wonderful.
But I'm closer to the city.
Wonderful. Alas, that's not why we're here to chat. We can chat all the time.
Yeah. Well, you ask away. I'd love to talk with you.
I think I can speak on behalf of every Lone Justice fan out there. Thank you for releasing a new record.
You are very welcome.
Yeah, and
welcome. I appreciate that.
What a record! To me, as I said to Marvin the other day, it just oozes with cool. You've got traditional songs, you've got hillbilly, you've got punk, you've got rock, you've got everything. It feels like a complete Lone Justice album. Do you feel the same way?
Well, how I feel about it is it feels like Lone Justice. Yeah. Like it's the only thing that feels like Lone Justice. That first record to me was not Lone Justice. That it was half Lone Justice, the first record, and the second record had nothing to do with Lone Justice.
That I agree with.
So to me, even the first record was compromised. No one ever really got to hear what our inspiration was. What we were really listening to. Maria and I were going out to see X, and loving that and that whole combination of rockabilly and punk that was kind of through Billy Zoom of X.
Mm-hmm.
That really inspired early Lone Justice. As well as the music. I was coming out of this whole rockabilly thing, and had a lot of questions about what happened to the urgency of country music. Like if Elvis did country, it sounded a certain way. Like why was Conway Twitty soft now when it was a rockabilly guy? So if there's all this stuff was going on fused together with this punk, Maria was singing with a blues band. So, there's this kind of like the Blasters in some way was like my Beatle moment. Seeing the Blasters allowed me to see all kinds of music together. And, me and Maria both saw it that way. And so this record is really just that combination, the undertones, the hillbilly stuff, the gospel, like that's what we were doing. There were no corrals around what we were doing at the beginning. And that's why I like this record. It feels like the original vision.
That's awesome. Although I will concede that first record is a desert island album for me.
You know what? Listen, I don't diss it. I'm just talking about Lone Justice. Like what people are relating to right now is what we were before Ivan got a hold of us. Like once Ivan got a hold of us, everything, the path changed and it was no longer that. Gotcha. And there was enough of that. It's, it's like turning around the Titanic. It takes a long time for it to turn around. So we still had a lot of that, but where he was guiding us was evidenced by Shelter, He wasn't guiding us in a way that made sense. What you're hearing right now is the synthesized, what that vision was originally.
Pulled into a pretty grove of pines and made ourselves comfortable. Then I heard music.
I want to take you back to the beginning of the band.
Mm-hmm.
You created this genre of, country, punk, rock. You elevated everything, and you're really like in my Dayton, Ohio, where I grew up, mind, you're like ground zero for what we now call Americana. And I'm curious what inspired you to bring all of those sounds together to create this unique sound that was solely your own?
I'll go back and say, I got to see the Blasters. I was a rockabilly guy, LA, rockabilly was this weird thing that came out of the punk movement. There was a punk club down here called The Mask that this English guy ran, and he had this group, Levi and the Rockettes, come. And it was the first time, like this isn't 77 or 78, kids with tattoos. You've never seen that in LA. You know, that wasn't the norm. And they had big pompadours, and they were really colorful, and it lit LA up. There was a big rockabilly scene that happened. There were some original people, and then there was this second explosion that happened. Like Jimmy and the Mustangs, and there was a bunch of bands, and James Infield, a bunch of bands down in Orange County, and I was part of that movement. I had a band called Bedrock, and I kind of went out and I did it, but after a while, I became kind of. It wasn't giving me. It didn't feel like I could grow into this music, like lyrically, and what was going on with rockabilly. It felt like that there was some other place that I could go. And, around this time, I was going to see The Clash, going to see The Jam, but I had also discovered this country station in LA called KLAC. Biggest hit at the time was George Jones, He Stopped Loving Her Today. And I was in love with that song. I loved the production, and I loved his voice. And, coming out of rockabilly this was all kind of happening at the same time. And, like the revelation for me about rockabilly was Elvis Presley Sun Sessions. Like I had always heard about Elvis, and I heard his stuff, and it was all kind of like, yeah, whatever. The guy's like in the movies. It's a little corny, I'd never heard that Sun stuff. And I heard that, and that kind of changed everything for me in my head. And I could see where the rock part of that music went, but I couldn't see where the country went, because like the people that started off doing rockabilly that became country, and you could name them, Johnny Cash, Conway Twitty, George Jones, like all of them, they got soft. But the blues didn't get soft. It had an edge. And I was like, what happened to that exuberance, that youthful exuberance of that country? What happened? I was just kind of like, after my rockabilly band, meditating on that whole thing, thinking about it. And then I saw a band called Rank and File. And Rank and File kind of said that to me. It wasn't what I was hearing. They were different, but they were in that place. They were using that Western thing. They were somewhere else. And I liked, they brought that punk energy. They were from the Dills and the Nuns. And that really kind of gave me this, so I'm listening to The Clash, so I just kind of started to drift more into that and started to think about what I would do. And I was still in that rockabilly movement. And one night I saw Maria singing at a parking lot with a bunch of other kids. And they were doing rockabilly songs. And she had a good voice. And so I asked a friend of mine for her number. And I went up to her house, and I kind of turned her on to what I had been thinking about, where I was. She was kind of thinking all rockabilly. And I was like, no, I'm done. There's something else out here. And so I turned her on to it, but like she's 19 at the time.
Right.
At her mom's house. Her brother Brian's there.
Mm-hmm.
So he's around, and Brian is a really interesting character because he's got, this deep history in music, in LA music, knowledge. Like he was turning us on to stuff that we hadn't heard. I was 22, Maria was 19. Like he's turning me on to Rose, Maddox Brothers and Rose. And I'd never heard of them.
Yeah.
He turned us on, he would play us like bird songs. So he kind of got it. And Maria and I both kind of just continued to work on that. And we were essentially, in the beginning, we're just a duet. Okay. And so we were singing kind of some Graham Parsons. I had just gotten turned on to Graham Parsons. So we did some of that, but then we would go deeper down into the Stanley Brothers. And I just, like, when I put bands together, I usually do it with covers. I find the covers that kind of say what I want to say. And once I can kind of create it with these other people's songs, I've created this thing that I can write into. So that was the beginning of what I was doing there, what we were doing with Lone Justice. So we kind of created the sound And then we started to try to write into it. And it was me and Maria in the beginning just singing duets. Marvin got involved a little early for a moment, then he went away. I brought my rockabilly band into it. So the original lineup was me and Maria, a guy named Dave Harrington, and a guy named Don Willens. And they were really, important in what we were doing at that point.
Right.
And we just started playing the clubs at that point. We had got it together. Don had been in Bedrock. And I don't know how I found Dave. Used to find musicians through like these newspapers that recite. I think that's how I found Dave. I'm still friends with him. Don passed away years ago.
Okay.
But so then we just started playing clubs, and that was kind of like the beginning of the band,
Fast forward to today. How do you feel about the band's legacy in the alt country and roots rock scenes today?
Honestly, I don't think about it that much. I'm still just kind of doing my own thing. I haven't stopped, I have been working in this type of music my whole life. I did a band called Parlor James when I was in New York with Amy Allison.
Saw that.
I came back here. I did some, after me and Amy did a couple of records with Malcolm Byrne down in New Orleans, I came back here to LA and I did this like weird trancey loop-based like hillbilly fuck music called Rattlesnake Daddy. And I played to these kids and it was all loops. And I had a didgeridoo player and a bongo player. And we would go across, we'd bring people on stage with us. And I'd get these like, that's what Jenny Jenkins comes from.
Will you wear beige, oh my dear, oh my dear? Will you wear beige, Jenny Jenkins?
No, I won't wear beige cause it shows my age. I'll buy me a folder, roll it, tilde, tilde, CKW, use it cause I roll to find me. Roll, Jenny Jenkins, roll.
Will you wear yellow, oh my dear, oh my dear? Will you wear yellow, Jenny Jenkins?
No, I never wear yellow cause it wouldn't get a fellow. I'll buy me a folder, roll it, tilde, tilde, CKW, use it cause I roll to find me. Roll, Jenny Jenkins, roll.
Will you wear brown, oh my dear, oh my dear? Will you wear brown, Jenny Jenkins?
No, I won't wear brown cause it never get around. I'll buy me a folder, roll it, tilde, tilde, CKW, use it cause I roll to find me. Roll, Jenny Jenkins, roll.
And once I got a groove going, I grabbed my guitar and I just start to, go like Jerry Garcia on top of it, just, riffing.
It's so funny. I don't think the didgeridoo gets enough credit. That's
No, man, Didge. I love a good drone, I love a good drone.
It's an amazing instrument. I'm glad you mentioned Jenny Jenkins. It's such an interesting song to me lyrically.
Right.
Because it's entirely fun because you sing end on a color, and then Maria's got a rhyme with that color.
Right.
Now, here's my question, and forgive my ignorance. Were those written out for you, or were those improvised when you did that? So, in other words, were the lyrics written out?
Well, I lifted this from a Garcia Grisman record called For Kids, Not for Kids Only, I think is what it was called. And there was you can listen to it. My daughter was just a baby and I was playing it for her. And I love that song. So I think I took the lyrics from it, but then I've changed them, so like I don't, they could be ours. I know that I've done a bunch of different versions of that. And, I'm into the folk tradition, which is you just kind of take it, now it's yours, and you do your thing with it, you change it. So I know that some of those lyrics, I don't know if they were improvised. Maria's might have been. Mine might have been. I know that I use kind of different words sometimes. I'm just loose with it, you know.
That whole first side, what Marvin calls the first side, You Possess Me, Jenny Jenkins, Rattlesnake Mama, Teenage Kicks, To Wade in the Water.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
I know it was strong, you know. When Marvin called me and I listened to those tracks, I was like, you know, I haven't heard Maria sing like that in years. It sounds fucking amazing. Like she just sang, is singing so good.
Yes.
Tracks.
Yeah, and to that end, we talked about this with Marvin as well. To cover "I Will Always Love You" is a swing for the fences, and my God, you guys knocked it out of the park.
Well, that was all her. It was half a song. It wasn't there. You know, it was just they were gonna just let it go, and I was like, oh, you know, there was too much there. We had to figure out a way to create a song, and it was great. We brought Tammy Rogers back in, who played on the original track. And she filled it out. But Maria was singing it too good. And Dolly is such a big part of this band. You know, we've had multiple interactions with Dolly over the years. But originally, she was just a big booster for Maria, really got the band. And then years later, when I was doing Rattlesnake Daddy, I was playing a lot for Miley Cyrus and Billy Ray.
Oh, wow.
Because they were filming there, and some of the people that came to my shows were part of that. And so we got invited, and I played a couple of times, and Billy Ray really took a liking to Rattlesnake Daddy. And he wanted me to open for him. He invited me down one night to see a friend, or to meet a friend of his. And when I was down there, I didn't know it, but Dolly was on stage because I didn't watch Miley Cyrus, but Dolly Parton was her grandmother, I guess, on the show.
Oh,
and so I showed up to go meet this guy, and somebody says to Dolly Parton that somebody from Lone Justice is there. She stands up and has literally like a 5-minute conversation with me. Like I'm in the bleachers with all of the people that are watching it, you know?
Yeah.
Down on the stage in the lights talking to me. And as sweet, just like what you want her to be, she was, you know? And she was so sweet about it. So you cut to like a year later, and Marvin and I have finally got people that want to put out the VOT tapes, you know, because that had been around for a long time. We had done that early on. And that was the closest to what the band was at its heyday, pre-Ivane. Okay. You know, that was our live set played straight over a 2-day period. We just played a couple of things. So we finally got someone to put it out, and we were trying to, you know, figure out the artwork and all that stuff. And they wanted someone to write. And I was like, you know, they were Dwight, all this stuff. And I was like, you know, I saw Dolly like a little while ago. She still remembers the band. You know, maybe we should send it to her. And so everyone got it together, and we sent it to Dolly. And her people were like, yeah, thank you. We really appreciate it. Dolly's really busy. You know, we don't think she'll be able to get to this, but thanks. We'll show it to her. And I didn't think anything of it. And we're at the final stage of doing the artwork, and we get a phone call from a woman, and she's like, you guys got a fax machine? Dolly listened to that record, and she loves it. Dolly did a handwritten letter about that record and about the band, and they faxed it to us.
Wow. And
I'm just like, okay, Dolly is like God. You know, she's a goddess. That's just the sweetest thing. You know, we're a little band that was, you know, it became a cautionary tale, you know?
Yeah.
Right?
Your words. Your words. I won't necessarily disagree.
I mean, you know, I watch a lot of bands too, you know, it's like, that's not the way you want it to go.
No. I did have the good fortune of seeing you perform.
Where at?
You were opening for U2 at the Brendan Byrne Arena, the old Brendan Byrne Arena in East Rutherford, New Jersey. And
okay.
It would have been, why am I drawing a blank? The Joshua Tree Tour. Sadly, Ryan, I had ingested some chemicals.
But, you know, I don't know if I was at that one. Was that?
Might not have been.
That was at the That was the Shelter Tour.
That was Shelter.
I had just skedaddled at that point.
Yeah. So it was just Maria at that point.
Yeah, Maria, and my friend was with her. My friend Greg Sutton. He had a lot to do with that second record.
Okay. Let's talk Rattlesnake Mama.
What about her?
What a barn burner. What an incredible tune.
I found that it was Rattlesnake. It was an old song that I found called Rattlesnake Daddy. And I thought it was perfect. Let's change it to Rattlesnake Mama. I mean, part of the early Justice stuff was to put Maria into positions of, pushing on boundaries.
Okay.
So, like, having a Rattlesnake Mama, but that same ballsy. Like, I always thought, like, when girls were in bands, that they were always, like, portrayed a little prissy. And I wanted it to feel like Maria was with the Rolling Stones. Like, that's what it should feel like. And that song was part of that whole thing,
I'm a rattlesnake mama from sunny Tennessee. I'm a rattlesnake mama, I'm from Tennessee. When you hear me roll, better get out on your knees.
When we came up with that song, to play it like that, make it a barn burner, and that became like a blueprint for a lot of songs after that.
Yeah. In fact, about an hour before we hopped on the call, I was watching some old footage of Lone Justice at the Ritz. That was and boy, what an incredible performance from all of you.
that band. I mean, there's so many different phases with the band,
Right.
With the band, and they all have their brilliance. The original one with Don Willens and Dave Harrington, that was all origination. The one with Marvin and Heffington, that was definitely like that. That was kind of what everybody. We had a lot of magic together, the four of us.
Yeah.
After that, it became me, and this is the Ritz band. Me, Maria, Dawn, Greg Sutton playing bass, and Tony Gilkison on guitar. Okay. And by the end of that tour, we had kind of rediscovered a new direction for Justice that worked for us because, Ivy had kind of fucked things up a little bit. So once we're out on the road, things were starting to get back to some kind of normalcy. And we found this kind of little bit of the Rolling Stones meets a little bit of Janis. There were a couple of great songs. One Maria had called Little Bit of Heaven. It was beautiful. She performed the shit out of it. We were doing songs off of the Stones Exile at that point. And so we had kind of now started to find kind of something that was a little rockier, but it still had our country roots to it. And that was that band. And then that was the end of Lone Justice. Once Ivy heard that stuff, he went on a, he just blew the band up. And then you were, left with that last band.
Yeah.
And then it was really just kind of like the prelude to Maria's solo career. Like that's what it became. Shelter just became like what Maria's solo career would be.
Yeah.
With Jamie.
After I heard that second record, Shelter, and I'm like, oh, well, this isn't quite what I'd hoped for.
Yeah. That's nice. I had people crying. I had to be crying. Like, what happened? And my head spun for 30 years after that. I couldn't figure out what happened. It was like, what the fuck? We were doing something, and wow, now it's just like blatant commercialism. Like it was interesting, and it became like,
I don't want to slag it too much, but it became like everything else.
Exactly. But that was really like, when we were doing Long Justice, and I was like discovering Merle Haggard, and me and Maria, sometimes Marvin would join us. We'd go to a record shop and we'd be going through finding Merle Haggard records for $1. Like that was our own little club. Like there was nobody else in that club. And when Ivan came in, he didn't understand that. It was like he had to listen to other stuff. Like he wanted to be like everybody else. I was really happy just being kind of right where we were, finding our own things, the things that excited us, because that's what really gave that band the fire.
Yeah.
The band had a lot of fire, but when Ivan got there, it was just like he was listening to like, groups like the Simple Minds and shit like that. It's just like, I mean, no diss to those guys, but that has nothing to do with No Justice. And that was kind of, he started to just shove it into that hole, however he could.
Let me ask you about Teenage Kicks. Was that a song you guys had always played, or was that?
No, that song those guys did. We'd always talked about it, and I think I met Fergal, and loved that song. But that was just part of these tapes that showed up. That they all got together. I was living in New York, and these were like demo tapes for her Sin to Get Saved record.
Okay.
So it was the guy, David Vaught, who had worked with us before. I think he was living at Marvin's house. So he just ran a tape and put up a few microphones and caught that stuff. That one, I think, might have been a little different. They might have actually properly recorded that, but it was all done in Marvin's house, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. I just came in at the end on that one.
I said this to Marvin. I don't think I articulated it well, so I'll try to correct it now. The way the record is sequenced, to me, it almost seems like it could be a live performance in that, each song is so eloquently placed, that, and then you end on this banger, right? Sister Ann.
Yeah.
I'm curious your take on the whole sequencing of the record.
Well, I really did want it to feel like that. I wanted it to feel like a live experience, and Marvin pretty much took the lead on that, and Marvin has a good ear for sequencing.
Yeah,
and I had no complaints. I love the way. At one point, I thought maybe the Dolly Parton song should have ended it, but I'm cool. I like Sister Ann too.
Yeah, interesting choice. I'm like Sister Ann. I was like, wow, all right.
Yeah, we love all that. I think Ben Montern, who was the one who turned us all onto the MC5.
Okay. Oh, I noticed on your website, in the early days, there's a picture of you guys with Roy Orbison, and is that Eddie Van Halen?
Yeah, yeah.
Peeking in? I'm like, wow, that's pretty trippy.
I think it was, and there was somebody else there too. There was a bunch of us. But that was Waylon Jennings too.
Right, that's the other guy. Yes.
Yeah, Waylon Jennings too. Yeah, that was at the first Farm Aid.
Okay.
So like it was a blast backstage. There was a ton of people. It was quite a trip.
That's funny. I was like, that's Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah, Eddie Van Halen and Roy Orbison, and that was before Roy did all that stuff. I used to go see Roy. He was one of the guys I loved from that rockabilly thing. He has great rockabilly tracks. I was cool with the way he went at a rockabilly, but like Conway Twitty, not so, or George Jones. Thumper Jones became, this slick guy. It was like, we were kind of looking for that country, that honky tonk, kind of out of control sound that rockabilly used to have, when we played country. This world is not my home. Like those type of songs were really informative to the style of Low Justice early on in the beginning.
Okay.
Out of those songs came songs like Soap, Soup, and Salvation.
Oh, yeah.
Which, was great. I mean, there's possibly like the way we recorded the first record, we think that there's about like maybe 6 or 7 of our original songs recorded by us at the power station that have never seen the light of day. And we're trying to see if we can get them back and possibly put them out, because we recorded everything. And then Ivan kind of just drug it out and left things behind.
Oh, fuck. Marvin said that as far as, because I never, the version of Lone Justice I saw was not the one that I would have wanted to see, and I was chemically.
Right. See, so it probably all worked out.
Yeah. But he said that Nothing Can Stop My Loving You, the live track on the record, is about as close as that's what you guys sounded like live at that particular moment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were on, I mean, listen, some of our shows at the Palomino were like, felt so magic, we would just like, we'd get up there and it just felt like we were levitating, it was, the energy was so intense.
Wow.
The band at that point, when that song was done, is Benmont on that one? I don't think so. I think it's Joel Saunier.
Yeah.
That's before Benmont. And the band was just kinetic. I mean, the energy was we were all having such a great time and it was so much fun. And I really feel like me and Maria tapped into this indigenous sound of Los Angeles. And if you do research and you look back at it, you'll see there were guys like Webb Pierce, I think was his name, but these honky-tonk guys from LA that played. And, LA was like a lot of Midwestern people, in the 40s and the 50s, after World War II, people came out here to work for a lot. There was all the aerospace stuff. There was a lot of people out here that liked country. So like all of the big country people moved out here. Bob Wills moved to L.A. Mm-hmm. Lefty Frizzell moved to L.A. Like, you think about it, when Graham Parsons wanted to do country music, he didn't go to Nashville. He went to L.A. Johnny Cash was here. It was like, this was a big place. Willie spent a lot of time coming back and forth. L.A. kind of just relates to country a little more. And at that point, I think when me and Maria started to do this, we tapped into this, that people like around our age, it was a distant echo. But when we started to do it, that upbeat, it's kind of like, Maddox Brothers. It's just this ancient kind of a California sound, unbeknownst to us. So we just tapped into it. We just heard it.
I want to circle back to the rockabilly because I was a bit flummoxed at the venues that the Stray Cats were playing on their recent tour.
Oh, yeah. Where were they playing?
Pretty large venues. And
with Brian Setzer, right?
Yeah, with Brian Setzer. Yeah. And the ticket prices were astronomical.
Good for
me. And I was like, what am I missing? They don't have any new material, to my knowledge.
No, I mean, he's just been doing that kind of lounge act for like ever, and he does a big Christmas thing, right?
Yeah. And I was like, am I missing something? Is rockabilly coming back? So I put that question to you.
But I mean, think about it. I mean, part of what bugged me about rockabilly was Sha Na Na. It's like there's always that kind of a thing. Maybe he's just filling that void for right now where people like that. I mean, he's got a good voice.
Yes, he does.
He's a good singer. That it was a good band, but it's kind of a one-trick pony. And he didn't really take it. Like Roy Orbison took it to another place.
Right.
Like they're just kind of like doing the same thing. Yeah. That's never been anything that's been of interest to me.
No. Speaking of interest to you, who are your influences as a guitarist and a songwriter?
Well, songwriters, I've always loved the Texas guys. All of them. I love Willie. And as a guitar player, I'm going to say Willie Nelson. Used to be Jimmy Page. He got beat out by Willie Nelson. Willie might be my favorite guitar player of all time.
Really?
I love Willie Nelson's playing. He is so, you hear him, it's him. It's just like a great horn player. Like, you hear Coltrane or you hear Miles Davis, you can really pick those sounds out. Same thing with Willie. Man, he's got his phrasing that he sings with, and as a guitar player, second to none, And, I just love a great songwriter. So in the bigger picture of Lone Justice, Greg Sutton was the bass player. He came in, he replaced Marvin, and then he actually made it into the second record. He had a few songs covered. And Greg and I, just recently, we've been hanging out and making music together. Like Greg is a world-class songwriter. He gives, him and Carole King go give, songwriting, pep talks. He's world-class. I love good songs. And so I like somebody who understands a good turn of a phrase, understands the whole thing. And so for me, in the beginning, it was these Texas guys. I loved Butch Hancock. I loved Guy Clark.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, I can't go wrong with those guys, And Willie's kind of part of that. Willie's kind of like the grandfather to that. And, but my taste, I like that solid, beautiful, well-written song. I like it. Like David Olney was a fantastic songwriter. He passed away a few years ago. He wrote a lot of songs for that Emmylou Harris record. Deeper Well, was that the name of her record?
Yes.
That one she made with Daniel Lanois?
I think so.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm not, but that one. He wrote a bunch of songs on that. So for me, it ain't really so much the songwriter as it is the song. And that's what I really respond to. If I hear a great song, it inspires me. And I like that kind of folk edged, dark, Robert Hunter, Jerry Garcia, like I'm a giant fan.
There's a female songwriter named Lydia Lovelace. Are you familiar with her at all?
No.
I think she's fantastic. I think she is the female Paul Westerberg from The Replacements.
Wow.
I really dig her writing. But she has this one song called More Like Them. You mentioned hook. There's a hook at the very end. Now, I've probably heard this song thousands of times. And the hook at the end gets me every single time. It's repetition throughout it's repetition. And then there's a hook. And I'm like, God damn it, every time.
Yeah. I mean, some songs are like that. I remember somebody playing me Acid Tongue by Jenny Lewis. And there was just something about that song that, like, every point I got to this one point, and it was just like a dagger every time. It was such a powerful song,
Love that.
Yeah, I do too. I think that we miss that right now. We don't. It's hard to get exposed to that. There's not a lot of songs you hear on a daily basis that you can hum. It's like we're missing that part of our existence.
I think for me, everything is just so saturated. I can't go to Spotify. I'm just inundated. I
agree.
It's like going into Amoeba Records, right? You
Yeah.
go in, unless you know what you want to buy and you have a distinct list. Otherwise, you just get lost. Your mind blows up when you go in there. Same thing with Spotify. It's like there's just too much.
Yeah, I agree. I like it curated. I do like to be told about stuff. I got to tell you, because I've been feeling this for a long time. And a friend of mine he did some shows. He's this pedal steel player, and he did some shows here in town. And I went he did 4 Tuesdays, 1 month, and I went the first night to see him. And I got that feeling again, like when I saw this. My friend's name's Rocco DeLuca, and he'd been playing with Lenoir. They made a few records together, 2 of them on pedal steel. And Rocco now is kind of on his own doing this stuff. And he's doing this devotional music. So like I'm seeing him with this band here at the R Bar, upright bass player, plays with weights, this French kid who plays jazz drums, fucking phenomenal. Rocco playing lap steel, a guitar player who sings these beautiful harmonies, sometimes another guitar player, sometimes a trumpet player and a flute player. And at times it sounds like the Blind Boys of Alabama, this, really beautiful, but with the, the organ-y kind of pedal steel. And then at other times it could be Coltrane doing Love Supreme. It's like trancy and the pedal steel's in the, the tenor sax place. Other times it feels like you're listening to Chance. And it was like, fuck, my mind was blown. Like I went out, I'm fucking old, dude. I'm 63. Like I worked my fucking ass off. I went out every fucking Tuesday to see him, hook or crook. I had to see it. It was so great. It was so inspiring. And I realized how rare that is in my life now,
Yeah.
He just scored that Scorsese movie.
Really?
Yeah. He just did that. He's on fire. I saw him then a couple of nights later with like these sitar players. Fucking amazing. And then a club here in LA called Zebulon. I saw him playing with this guy who was an Indian raga steel player. Fucking crazy shit. And it's like, it's so exciting to see something that first off you haven't seen before.
Right.
It's like this modern devotional music. That's kind of what it feels like. It's, it's devotional as Coltrane and Love Supreme and the Blind Boys, and then the Indian and doing ragas. There's like that for me was exciting. The other thing I got excited about was seeing the Dead at the Sphere, You
saw that?
I went one time. I saw the Dead 75, 76, 77, 78, 79. Some all that time. And I was like, fuck John Mayer. I saw Jerry. I don't need to go. But my girlfriend is like, I'd really like to see him. And she'd never say, I said, okay, we'll go. We went one night. I came home. I bought 2 more tickets.
Wow.
That same weekend that I came home, I bought 2 more tickets. So I went 3 times. Fucking amazing. And the Grateful Dead's music lives on.
Yeah.
It just lives on. It's like, Weir's barely there. This, that band is John Mayer and those guys, and they are fucking great.
John Mayer, I am not despite what you see of the guitars, I'm not a musician, but I can recognize he is a phenomenal guitar player.
He is. And the thing that I love about him is that when he's up there playing and doing that Garcia stuff. What was it that Trump said? Wait, hold on. Let me turn this off. Something just turned on. When he's up there and he's playing that stuff, he's just making these weird faces. His head's going back. And you can tell that he's just overtaken by the music. Yeah. And he's so available and so just vulnerable. And I have to love him for that, that he just lets go that much. And he was fucking great. Great.
That Sphere thing scares the hell out of me. I don't know.
It should. I mean, I took mushrooms the first time. Okay. I think somebody microdosed me acid and mushrooms the second time. And both times, I think that the Sphere was stronger than the drugs. The third time I was like, I got to get really high. I took a shitload of mushrooms and I got really high. It is a fucking trip. It's like, imagine sticking your head in like a fishbowl and all you can see is that's what it is. And when things start to move, people have like seasick bracelets on, because it starts to move and you think you're moving. It's intense. I stood up. I thought I was going to fall over.
Wow.
Yeah, it's never seen anything. And a band like the Dead with that gigantic breadth of cultural iconic images,
For sure.
and this whole history that they have. Oh, it was a blast. I did, the seats are great. Like the seats are kind of part of it. You'd be kind of in the middle. That's like as good as it gets. And then I did one night on the floor because that's a Dead concert,
Okay.
You get on the floor. You can't. It's not really about that because you're down there. Everything's kind of distorted. You don't see it from the floor the same way. But fuck, yeah, blew my mind. It was great.
One day I'll get to it. Now, I had two last questions for you.
Shoot.
The first one, I think I know the answer to, but I have to ask it because I know people are going to want to know. Will there be any tour live dates behind?
I don't think so. It doesn't feel like Maria has any interest in doing anything.
Okay. That's kind of what I figured. But now the second question, we have a Substack newsletter. We have a fair amount of people that follow us, and somebody had posed what we were listening to, and I'd written, I'm listening to a lot of Lone Justice right now because I was planning this out. And they're like, oh my God, I love Lone Justice. I love Lone Justice. Da, 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 da. I'm like, well, if you have a question, I'd be happy to ask it of them. I'm arranging an interview and so on. So this is a question from a Substack reader from our community. So do you think things would have been different artistically and commercially if the four of you had stayed together between the first and second album?
Wow, that's a great question. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. If we had been able to stay together, yeah, absolutely. When Marvin bailed on us, that was kind of, that got rid of that band. There was nothing we could do at that point,
Right.
But yeah, no, had he not skedaddled at that point, yeah, we would have made it through. It was tough, but certain things had to change. There was bad, me and Maria were young and impressionable, and there were bad decisions that were made. And one of them was the original manager, who was a bit of a predator. And she was the one who started to originally present the band as like Maria and the Boys. We were originally a band, and she was the one who kind of started that. And that kind of led to other things. But we eventually got rid of her, and there was a chance that we could have possibly pulled it off. Had Ivy not been part of it, absolutely, there would have been a shitload of albums.
Yeah. And then I lied. One last question. What was it like hearing Don Heffington play?
Well, I love Don. I mean, he's like, Don to me is part of me. I was 22. I'd never played with a pro.
Yeah.
And Marvin and I, we had gotten taken under the wing of a guy named Steve Fischel, who was Emmylou's pedal steel player at that time. And he'd seen Lone Justice, and he was a real big promoter for us. Really nice guy. And he went on to produce the Mavericks and a bunch of stuff, real talented guy. Around this time, I'd kind of become friends with him and hung out at his house a couple of times. And Marvin and I had a bunch of songs, and so we put together this little jam session. And this was right around the time that Don Willens had left, which was really tough for me and Maria. Don was a good friend of ours, and things had gotten to a point where we couldn't continue further anymore. And, having nothing to do with his ability as a drummer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was real tough because, things were percolating, and I knew that it would be, it would be hard for him, at that point, but we couldn't continue. And so we were kind of without a drummer And Marvin and I did this thing. We called it Hot Justice because it was the hot band. And who showed up that day was, Steve Fischel, of course. Marvin played bass. I played guitar. David Mansfield shows up. He's playing, I think, fiddle, pedal steel. Albert Lee shows up. Albert Lee's playing guitar. And Don Heffington's on drums. And we went and we played. And, thank God those tapes don't exist because, for me to take a solo at 22 after Albert Lee, that's rough, But afterwards, I said to Marvin, that's the drummer we need. And he was in Emile Harris's band, but Marvin had the balls to call him up and ask him, and he said, yeah. And he came in and we hung out, and Heffington was like the perfect addition at that point. Super cool, great taste, like played the auto harp, knew who the Carter family was, loved them, knew jazz inside and out, played with some really great jazz players, could play country music with Emmylou. It was like, okay, this, and knew, old punk shit. And so that's when Don came on board at that point. That was really, that's when the magic started,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when the real magic started. Marvin had transitioned from doing our demo tapes that got turned down by Geffen to becoming our bass player at that point. And I thought that was a much better place for him. Then it became this triumvirate of me, Marvin, and Maria. Marvin had experience. I had been a fan of his band. That's why I had reached out to him. So Marvin was about 10 years older than us and had some experience. So I brought him in. At first he was the producer, and then he became the bass player, and he was still writing. And then he was writing songs with us. He kind of helped me and Maria become songwriters at that point. And once we added Don to that mix, boom, because I had no idea what a great drummer played. I've been playing with Don Willens and other guys, and, sometimes they're good and sometimes they suck. But like Heffington was just like the ultimate pro.
Wow.
Yeah, ultimate pro. Just a great player.
It's amazing.
Yeah, really was.
Well, I think you have, I don't know. I think the new record is great. I think everyone should listen to it.
I'm glad.
Yeah. I think I'm always amazed that I'm always amazed you didn't like the first one as much, but.
Well, for me, I could take it apart for you. It's like, you look at East of Eden, fantastic.
Right.
Dust Bowl Depression, great. I love the song. Is that the best performance? I don't know. What was Working Late, fantastic.
Soap Soup Salvation, fantastic.
Fantastic. Don't Toss Us Away, great. So like all of those. And then you get into Sweet Sweet Baby. So this is Jimmy shoving little Steven on top of us. That had nothing to do with what we were doing at that point.
Right.
Jimmy's like, it's going to be a hit. Here's how we're going to do it, And that's what that became. Now, granted, it's a good song, but it has nothing to do with this vision of Lone Justice. He didn't get it. Like, Ivan was absolute worst when it came to music. Like, he was the absolute worst guy we could have picked. Businessman, great. Producer, he stopped producing after us. He screwed the pooch on us so bad, he stopped producing.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, you watched that documentary, Defiant Ones. It's there in the subtext, and he talks about him. About 86 people tell me I probably shouldn't produce anymore. He ruined it, He totally did not get it. And that's the problem, is where Ivan started to push his vision of what. He didn't know who Merle Haggard was. He didn't know who Roy Nichols was. He had no idea what the Maddox brothers was, He didn't know any of that stuff. He's from New York City, Yep. He was a schmoozer. He got that, and he got, he brought Benmont in to do pre-production. Well, how bad's that going to be? It's Benmont Tench,
Yeah.
All the premier musicians. Benmont, great. But then it was Jimmy kind of chasing a hit. It's like the second record was all that. But I saw the beginning of it. So that's what my thing comes from.
Okay.
Seeing the beginning of that in that first record, like those first 5 of those songs, stellar. And Maria was singing great at that point.
So this record is like redemption in a lot of ways.
Totally. For me, it is.
Yeah.
For me, it is. It's like, boom, this is what we were doing. I'm glad everyone likes it, but we were doing this 35 years ago. Just like this.
Now, I had interviewed Marvin, pardon me. I had interviewed Marvin a year and a half ago about that first record.
Mm-hmm.
And he had intimated that there might be something coming out for a 40th anniversary because this is the 40th.
Well, that's what I was just talking to you about, the possibility of those tracks. But who knows? It's like it's all between the people with lots of money, So we don't know what will ever happen.
All right. Well,
if it does, trust me, we're going to go through it and we'll put it out. I'll put it out. We'll figure out what it is.
Yeah.
And, I want to hear it. It was kind of like that was what Jimmy did. He kind of took us in, we're going to record all your stuff. And then we went in and we recorded, and then he just kind of killed everything and sat on things and then just kind of, created this stew of confusion for a little while until he could get songs that he understood. And so a lot of those songs just got buried and we've never heard them. So that we don't even really know what's there. There is, though, a beautiful version of a song called The Way, which was a Springsteen song. And it was a magic.
Really? Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, Iveen, because, Geffen said, okay, you guys can't write your first single. Somebody who's already written a single can, but not you guys. So here's who's going to write it for you. It's either going to be Tom Petty, it's going to be Bruce Springsteen, or it's going to be Bob Dylan. So Petty gives us Ways to Be Wicked.
Okay.
Springsteen gives us some song like Jenny's Got a Gun, something that wasn't that great of a song. It was okay. It was a B-side of a Springsteen thing. And Dylan writes for us Go Away, Little Boy. So Iveen hears a song that Springsteen gives us, and he's like, you guys should do The Way. So he basically got us to do The Way without Springsteen's permission. Well, he'd done that once before with Patti Smith, and she copywrote the lyrics, put her name on Springsteen's song. So Springsteen, I think, and Iveen had some kind of a thing about that. So when Iveen said to Jimmy, when Jimmy said to Springsteen, hey, listen to the song The Way, Springsteen's like, no, fuck you, you're not doing that again. It was done. But it's a beautiful song, and he's released it since then. So we might be able, if it comes out, that would be a great one to release. Ben Mont's on it playing organ. It's just that it's a melody. It's one of those Springsteen melodies that you never forget. It's haunting.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, Maria was singing great at that point.
Well, Ryan, we are at an hour, and I am so blessed and grateful that you took the time to chat with me about this album and about Lone Justice.
Absolutely. I'm glad I got to talk to you too, Keith.
I wish you the best, continued success.
Thank you, sir.
And
you too. I look forward to hearing this.
All right, man. Well, listen, thanks.
Absolutely, Keith. Good
Take care, okay?
All right.
We'll see you. Bye.
Thanks to Ryan for stopping by Thunder Love Studio. Special thanks to Jenna Jones at Fire Records.
This episode of Center Stage was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins. The show was recorded at Thunder Love Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration,
edited by
Vic Titball,
with help from
Clem Fandango.
Our theme song is Cynical by Jaguar on Mars. You can stream Jaguar on Mars wherever you stream your favorite music. The songs that you heard during this podcast were Skull and Crossbones, Jenny Jenkins, Rattlesnake Mama, and Wade in the Water. All of these songs can be found on the Lone Justice album, Viva Lone Justice. You can also find the album on their Bandcamp page, and the record is available to stream wherever you stream your favorite music. Please remember to support independent artists.
Original music by Mike Pellegrino.
You should be labeled with a skull and crossbones, 'cause you're a jinx to my soul. You should be labeled with a skull and a crossbones, 'cause you're a jinx to my soul.
We can argue what band is truly ground zero for the modern Americana movement. For me, that artist has always been Lone Justice. They may not have been the first, but they were the first to bring this unique sound to a wider audience. It's safe to say that Lone Justice cast a very long shadow. And with the release of Viva Lone Justice, they stand at the precipice of reaching an even larger audience. For reasons they each explain, this may not be a new album. You can safely consider it a new to you album. With the help of Fire Records, we were able to arrange interviews with the 3 surviving members of Lone Justice: Maria McKee, Ryan Hedgecock, and Marvin Etzioni. Each were gracious with their time and their stories about the legacy of the band. Broken into 3 separate interviews, what follows is my conversation with lead singer Maria McKee. I hope you enjoy it. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate this.
Of course. Thank you.
I have to tell you, the record's really, really great. I'm sure I'm not the only one telling you that, but wow.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I was kind of flabbergasted the first time I heard it, slightly.
Yeah? How did, I mean, tell us how that came to be.
Well, after Don Heffington passed away, Marvin and I were hanging out quite a bit to sort of work through it, process it. We would meet maybe once every 2 weeks, and go for a walk and eat, get some food. And one of those times, he just said, "Oh, I found these tapes that we did at my house with Don during the recording of Sin to Get Saved." It was around that time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you and me and Don, and Tammy joins in on fiddle. And he goes, "They're really, really fun. And I think we should put them out." And I said, "Great." And he goes, "Do you want it to be like a Maria McKee release?" And I said, I kind of moved on from the super hillbilly sounds. Like my last solo record was a really baroque Anglophile chamber pop. It's, romantic poetry, magnum opus.
Well,
So like, I don't know if it would fit into my sort of vocabulary at this time to release a country record, but why don't we make an LJ record? And I said, Ryan's not on it, but everyone else is on it. So let's just get Ryan on it. And let's you can overdub some guitars or whatever. And he said, "Great, I'm going to talk to Ryan." And it turned out that they ended up producing it. And I didn't hear it until it was done. Sequenced, mixed, not mastered yet, but like pretty much done.
Wow.
And he just had me go over, we went to our friend Willie Aaron. We went to his house for dinner, and then he sat me down and he gave me a notebook and a pen in case I had any notes. And he pressed play, and I just from the minute he pressed play, I was just like completely excited by it. I just had so much fun that first listen. I just couldn't get over how great it was.
Well, as a fan, I can tell you I had the same amount of fun.
Yeah, I think a lot of LJ folks were just like, "Oh my, this is wow,"
It seems like it's a fully realized Lone Justice record. And what I mean by that is you've covered, traditional songs, country songs, some hillbilly, to rock, to punk. It seems to encapsulate everything that the band was.
Yeah, I mean, if we had made an album that was a love letter to our influences, because there's only one original song on the whole album. And, the Lone Justice songs were good, so we were good songwriters too. So, I the fact that it's a covers album kind of makes me go, well, is it a really important Lone Justice record? Can it be a really important Lone Justice record if there's only one original song? But there's something about the passion that we have for that type of music, from punk to country to hillbilly to gospel, that comes through, that makes it kind of like, well, yeah, it kind of is, it kind of.
Well, absolutely.
In the way that sort of like, Grievous Angel was a lot of cover songs, but that was a really important alt country or, country rock record too. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Those early days when you were finding your sound, Did you have, was there a crystallizing moment when you guys were like, oh, that's it, we nailed it, that's the sound we want? Or was it a slow evolution and like, okay, a little bit of this, a little bit of that? Or was it an aha moment, I suppose, is the colloquial
I kind
term.
of feel like for me, when we would do Rattlesnake Mama, that was kind of like, okay, we're sort of like wrenching the sky open here and letting something come down.
I'm a rattlesnake mama from sunny Tennessee. I'm a rattlesnake mama, I'm from Tennessee. When you hear me rattle, better get out on your knees.
I mean, when we would do it live and it was really kicking and I was really like losing my shit, it kind of felt like, okay, this is what we're doing. This is it. You know, and it came from like punk rock and the energy of punk rock and Ryan and I just really getting into early music, like hardcore fans.
Early
Yeah,
music. What do you mean?
Yeah,
early
like
music?
hillbilly, bluegrass, Cajun, gospel, blues. You know, I just really, really obsessively just devouring it.
When I spoke to Marvin, we talked about the sequencing a little bit because you open with "You Possess Me," which is a beautiful vocal on that. That's just a beautiful song. And to Jenny Jenkins, to Rattlesnake Mama, to the undertones, to the gospel influenced "Wade in the Water," it almost seems like it's got, for me, it's got like a live performance vibe to it, like almost like that's what I would want to hear live, you know?
Well, it was kind of a field recording, you know, so it was pretty much just us jamming.
Oh, okay.
I mean, not "You Possess Me." Like some of the songs were later. Like "You Possess Me" was later. I can't remember when, but I think it was in the 2000s sometime. Jenny Jenkins, Ryan and I did around 15 years ago. So some of the stuff was later, but the stuff that was done during Syndicate Saved, like around 92 or 3, was, you know, I think Skull and Crossbones, Teenage Kicks, Wade in the Water, I Will Always Love You, Sister Anne. Like you can kind of tell a little bit the difference. And those were kind of like those were just kind of like us jamming in the living room, like field recording kind of style.
It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
You guys, Lone Justice had a relatively short lifespan, but your impact has been incredibly lasting. How do you reflect on that today, or do you?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like the second Lone Justice album, which is not a Lone Justice album, nobody from the original band is on it. I think Ryan did a little guitar early on, but then he left. That I look at as kind of like the kind of a cloaked Maria McKee record.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, that record in like Europe and the UK seems to be more impactful and more important. I don't know why. Whereas the first actual Lone Justice record, the one on Geffen that Jimmy Iovine produced, the first, you know, album, is the one that is really people feel is more important here and more important to the Americana sort of pioneer influence. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I suppose it was lightning in a bottle. But that first album is unique because it's not really, it's unique to what Lone Justice was because it's really kind of going more into like heartland rock type
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not full. It's not like it's not really a country punk record. Whereas we were in the beginning, we were really like a country punk band. And it's because songs like After the Flood, Pass It On, like all of that was really kind of me kind of going, oh, I sort of do want to be the female Bruce Springsteen.
Well, I have to tell you candidly, that first Lone Justice record is the Desert Island album for me. Has been for years. Yeah. And I said that to both Ryan and Marvin. They're like, really? I'm like, yeah, I think it's a phenomenal record.
Well, I think it's one of Marvin's Desert Island.
Yeah, good.
He's such a huge Lone Justice fan. Yeah, but I mean, that album was fun. It was, it was fun to make in some ways and really harrowing in other ways. Because we were like kids and we were brought to New York and Jimmy Iovine and everybody in the big record label and then like, I don't know, somehow Bob Dylan was there and Ron Wood and all these people. And then like Tom Petty's songs and Steve Van Zandt. And, it was just like, whoa, there's a lot.
I would imagine that is a lot. That's a lot for young guys and ladies.
But I mean, it was a lot from the beginning. It was bananas. I mean, I don't even understand it. Like, it was so crazy. Like, Dolly Parton came to one of our first gigs. Like, she doesn't go out to LA clubs and go to gigs, but we had this A&R person who was like, she was like a celebrity in her own right, Carol Childs, and she was like besties with Dolly. And she's like, you got to come see this little country singing person. And Dolly truly became a fan that night, and she's still a fan, and she's amazing, and then Emmy Lou showed up at another gig, and then Linda basically discovered me, like she was at some gig that we did out in the middle of nowhere in the valley. And I went in to put my lipstick on in the bathroom and she was there. And I learned to sing to Heart Like a Wheel, and well, it's one of the records that I learned to sing to. There were many, but that one was huge. And it was, huge for me in my teens, and I was still in my teens. And so I was like, okay, I really can't blow it because Linda's here. And then she went and told David about us.
Jeez.
Gavin. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and when we would play the Palomino, like David Byrne showed up one night and Stevie Nicks showed up another night. So it was just like, it was mayhem from the beginning, and I don't fully understand it. I think it was a partly of Jimmy Iovine being involved and kind of getting everyone there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it was also because we had a lot of energy and the shows were fun. And I was kind of a firecracker on stage and we were young. And when I settled down and really sang, I kind of had the goods. And I think,
Sure.
I think it just, or maybe it was just the time, it was just the time that when it was still kind of like not quite the 60s and 70s when everybody was hanging out in Laurel Canyon and everyone knew each other, like the early days of Asylum or whatever.
Right.
Not quite that, but not what it is now where nobody's really connected anymore. Although my goddaughter is a musician and she's one of those people who knows everybody.
Oh.
And there's a lot of musicians who know each other and help each other. But, it was, kind of, yeah, it was, I don't know. It was a crazy time. We had a lot of pressure on us and we were super young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you were. And I want to talk about the energy. The energy you have on stage was phenomenal. And I
had,
yeah. I always point people, there's the Ritz performance from, I think that would have been 86. That's up on YouTube. And people are like, oh, I love Lone Justice. I'm like, oh, you got to look at this. They're like, oh my God.
That's funny because that was after the band broke up,
Really?
I know. You know what?
No.
I'm thinking of that. We did two Ritzes. We did one for the first LJ where I did Janis Joplin and then, but I was thinking of the one that was filmed, which was for like release. which was around Shelter, which was
when I actually got a chance to see you on the Shelter tour. It was the old Brendan Byrne Arena. You were playing with U2. And
yeah, the Brendan Byrne, I remember that.
Yep. I unfortunately remember nothing about it because I was under the influence of a few chemicals.
Oh, wow. So you got loaded at a U2 show? That's kind of wild because I always think of like people going to their shows and being super Christian and like I wouldn't have thought that a U2 show would be where you would go and drop E or something. I didn't. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh, I dropped acid that night. I'm not ashamed to admit it.
Wow. Okay. Good for you. That's awesome.
The only thing I remember is they played Trip Through Your Wire twice. That's it.
That's such a great song.
Oh, it really is.
I love that song. That's one of my favorite U2 songs.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I feel like I used to come out to watch them do that one because I loved it so much.
I want to ask about your vocal influences. Besides,
they're pretty evident, really, when you listen to the back to the stuff.
Well, for those folks that it isn't so evident, it's Linda Ronstadt, I assume, Emmylou Harris,
yeah,
Dolly Parton.
Yeah, but and this is why I always have imposter syndrome. I was on my way to New York to study musical theater when my brother intercepted me and put a band together for me and started writing kind of country songs for me.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember when I quit the theater department at Beverly Hills High, the head of the theater department, John Ingle, who was a character actor and TV actor and stuff, he literally almost cried and begged me to stay. He was like, you could launch a theater career here because it's Hollywood and everybody's kid goes to this school. And I was like, yeah, I think I want to pursue rock and roll.
Nice.
And, I don't regret it, but I learned how to sing really listening to a lot of theater stuff. Angela Lansbury and Bernadette Peters and Patti LuPone and Judy Garland was my first favorite singer, and Bette Midler. And then when I became a teen, I had a best friend who's still my best friend, one of my best friends. And we got into we kind of were sort of mods together. And we got into Tamla Motown Soul, Stax, Northern Soul, girl groups, Phil Spector. And then that was huge for me, all of that. Wow. And then my other first favorite singer when I was a teen was Donna Summer. And you can kind of tell when you listen to her and you listen to me, you can kind of hear how I copy her. I think a lot, actually.
I'm going to have to go back and revisit that.
Yeah. Especially Bad Girls, like a song like My Baby Understands, which is a ballad. And then when I was 15, my friend Deirdre from junior high, she used to go to gigs and new wave gigs and stuff. And she said, let's go to the Whiskey and see Rachel Sweet. And I'm like, who's that? And she goes, oh my God, she's so cute. She has a song on K-Rock. What's in the Cuckoo Clock? And so I got her record. My mom didn't let me go to the gig, but I got her record. And she was a huge influence on me, Rachel Sweet. That first album, Fooling Around, when I was 15. And it's kind of a Lone Justice record in a way. It was put out by Stiff, and it was, I think, produced and recorded in England. She does the Elvis Costello country songs. She does girl group songs. She does soul. She does country. She does new wave and punk. And she kind of has a girl group voice. That was a huge influence on me, that album and her.
Fooling Around by Rachel Sweet. I just made it. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, she became more popular because she did the theme song for Hairspray, the movie, the John Waters movie, the original one.
Yep.
She kind of had a boppy baby voice, sort of like Cyndi Lauper could do that voice too, and And I loved that about her. And she was so cute too. She was like really young. And I was just worshipped her. I wanted to be her. I wanted to be her so bad. And I think she was from like the Midwest, like Ohio or something.
Yes, Midwest. I'm from Ohio. That's why I chuckled.
Oh, okay.
The songs. One song in particular is a personal favorite of mine, and that's Skull and Crossbones.
Yeah,
Where did-
rockabilly.
Rockabilly?
We were obsessed with rockabilly. Yeah, because after punk in LA, rockabilly became hugely popular. So the Mask was the big. I mean, there were a lot of punk bands like the Starwood, and obviously the ones down in Chinatown, Madame Wong's and Hong Kong Cafe, and all of those places. But the one that was the most sort of beloved and important was the Mask. And so when the Mask closed up, the next sort of place was in the early 80s was the Cathay de Grand, which was like deep in the heart of Hollywood. And I used to go there almost every night. Like I was obsessed with the place. I was really young, but I would find a way to get there. And so there was like a rockabilly scene. And there was in particular a band that I was really obsessed with. And I was like their little fan. I would go, in fact, I dated the bass player and I would go to every gig and I was like a groupie. And they were called the Red Devils. And they went on later to become a blues band that performed in the 90s. They were the house band at the King Club, I think, on La Brea. But in the early days, like 81, 82, they were a rockabilly band with a girl singer named Emmy. Her name was Emily, but she married the guitar player, David Lee. And so she became Emmy Lee. And she was really stunningly beautiful. And she dressed like out of like central casting 1950s, perfect 1950s, like square dancing dresses with like knee-high Chippewa motorcycle boots. And she had like a perfect Marcel wave. Her hair was like really always set, and her makeup was flawless. And she played a Charlie Christian, like a 1930s Charlie Christian guitar.
Wow.
And and it was like stand-up bass. And then David Lee was really influenced by Billy Zoom. So he played the same silver Gretsch and kind of tried to copy him a little bit. But it was cool because he was a stan, and he would kind of stand on stage and grin like Billy Zoom used to. And Billy ended up producing them. So they were like my first favorite LA band. Well, no, Top Jimmy and the Rhythm Pinks was my first favorite LA band. And then that was kind of how I started singing, because he got me up on stage with him at the cafe. So the Red Devils, I think it was the Red Devils. I don't know, but I think they were the ones who did Skull and Crossbones originally. I could be wrong about that, but I feel like possibly they were the ones that pulled it out of the archives and started doing it on stage.
Interesting.
And I don't know why I did like a rockabilly revival like 10 years later when we were doing these recordings, because it was 92 and the Red Devils were gigging around in like 81, 82. But I don't know. For some reason, I decided I wanted to do it back then. Because I was like, when Marvin played me the record and I heard Skull and Crossbones, I was like, oh my God, I totally forgot about this song. So it was a really great surprise for me. And it's kind of one of my favorite tracks on the album.
Mine too.
But if you'll excuse me now.
Oh? Why?
Why, I'd like to go up to my room for a moment.
To call up that girlfriend of yours again? Sit down.
Now, I want to ask you about Alabama Baby. I had done a little research on this. Well, not a little. I dug around as much as I could. And it had come up on the internet, so we know it's true. But it had come up that it was done by the Andrews Sisters.
I had no idea.
I couldn't find it. I couldn't find a copy of it. So I'm just curious if that was a reference for you at all.
No, but I loved when I was really little and I was like a real weird kid and I was obsessed with everything 30s, 40s, all the movies from the 30s and 40s and the Little Rascals and I basically wanted to live in the 30s and 40s, and I was, Andrew's Sisters obsessed, like anything Fred and Ginger, all of that, Judy, anything. But I had never heard them do that song. But I think we got it from the Blue Sky Boys, I think.
Okay.
Who were like a bluegrass band that recorded around the same time as the Andrews Sisters.
Okay.
30s, 40s, 50s, like probably. I think that's where I got it from, but I don't remember. It's a long time ago.
Talk about your daddy, boys, I got one. He's my Alabama baby, and he's so much fun. He's my Alabama baby. Shut up, no stuff. Well, he's the hottest thing in town. Lordy, that boy can love. He does a shimmy in the daytime, the boogie at night. He's my Alabama baby, and he does it right. He's my Alabama baby. Shut up, no stuff. Well, he's the hottest thing in town. Lord, that boy can love. Yeah. Well, we boogied last night and the night before. My Alabama baby wants more and more. He's my Alabama baby. Shut up, no stuff. Well, he's the hottest thing in town. Lord, that boy can love. Shake it, Marvin.
Yes.
Sweetheart, it's okay. It's okay. Come here. Sweetheart, it's okay. It's okay. If she hears anything like a firework, sorry, it's my dog.
It's okay.
If she hears anything like a firework, she becomes very upset. Sweetheart, you're a good girl. In fact, I booked us into the Bel Air Hotel on New Year's Eve just in case.
Oh,
Because
nice.
they said it's quiet in the canyon.
You're a big dog advocate.
Yes, I am. And greyhounds, X racers in particular.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. I
Yeah.
just lost my Pitty a couple of months ago.
Oh God, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, it was heartbreaking, but
Oh, there's nothing worse. Nothing worse.
that's the journey. It's the contract we make, right? It's like I know I'm going to give you the best life that I can. And
I know you're gonna break my freaking heart.
Yep. I just got goosebumps. Yep.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. I've lost everybody, my mom, my dad, my brother, friends, and when my last greyhound passed away, I didn't think I was going to survive it. Like I've never, I was wandering around the house, like howling, my husband would have to make me chamomile tea and give me like beta blockers to calm me down. And, and he just kept saying to me over and over again, you've got to get another dog. You've got to get, and it's the only way you're going to heal from this. And I was like, never again. There'll be nobody like her. How could there ever be anybody like her? And I'm never going to go through this again. And I'm never going to put myself through this again. And then I was just on Instagram and I saw the Greyhound adoption group page and I was like, don't swipe. Because it was like, here's our new retirees. They just come off the track. And I was like, don't look. And then I just started swiping and I see these little heads and I was like, uh-oh. And then I just emailed the president of Grey Save here, who's the adoption group. And I said, well, I lost my Enith Harmon. And she was like, oh, I'm so sorry. And then she's like, come down to the picnic and meet some new kids or whatever. Aww. And then she immediately started matching me. She just started texting me and asking me questions like, are they allowed on the furniture? Are they going to fly with you? Are they going to be an only? And I just was like, okay, I guess she's making a match.
and did she?
Yeah. And literally, I mean, she matched me with Enith Harmon and she's really good. And I mean, and literally a month later, I had Lizzie and the pain started to go away. I still have moments where it's really hard, but it's not like it was. I mean, it's just, you don't have time, because once you get a new guy, it's all about them,
Yeah. I find peace in knowing there's nothing I could have done. He had inoperable cancer. There was literally nothing I could have done.
Yeah, same.
So there's some peace there, but and I know one day I'll get another dog, but that pain that goes deep.
There's nothing worse.
Yeah. So, but I know I'll do it again.
Good. I hope you do.
Oh, I absolutely will. And I never thought in my lifetime that I'd own a pit bull, but they're
really
wonderful.
Sweet.
They're the sweetest.
My husband grew up with pits, and when I lived part-time in Ireland, the family I was with over there had what they call a Staffordshire Terrier, which are like pits.
Mm-hmm.
Precious angel of a dog.
They're beautiful. They're funny as all get out.
Yeah, they really are.
So much personality. But I want to ask you, I listened to your short story Charcoal.
Oh, you did? Oh, wow. Oh, interesting.
And I really enjoyed it. And I'm curious if fiction is something that you're interested in working more on.
I'm not mulling over fiction, but I every once in a while, I think, because I'm a huge nerd. Okay. So like, people don't expect this of me because I'm kind of a fancy lady and I have some erudition and I'm a bit of a dilettante. But then they find out that I'm like obsessed with Star Trek, obsessed with Star Wars, obsessed with the Twilight Zone, obsessed with like genre movies and horror. All Halloween, all month long, I've been on my Instagram listing my favorite horror movies and chatting with my followers about horror movies. Like, I'm a total nerd. So sometimes I think I wouldn't be utterly surprised if I didn't write something that was like fantasy, sci-fi, or horror. Or when I say horror, I don't mean Friday the 13th. I mean, like, I love like very haunting, sad, beautiful, like
a gothic type horror.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just picked up a book the other day that was like, it labeled itself as Midwestern noir. I'm like, all right, I'll go in on this.
Oh, I like the sound of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, but I on the books for me right now is to tackle sort of something like a memoir-ish kind of thing.
Oh.
And I did sort of touch ground a little bit. I did sort of write a little bit on that tiny bit, and I'm mulling it over and thinking about it. It's not going to be like a music business memoir, but it's going to be more about my family and LA. And, because my roots here are like millennial. Like my great grandmother was First Nations LA County, like Tongva Nation, which is the Gabrielino tribe, which are the caretakers of the LA County basin. So like, that's one of the reasons why I can't move, because my roots here are like thousands of years deep. So I have like a lot of personal history of family and stuff that I want to delve into about LA, and just kind of just the other stuff too, like interesting stuff and that's happened to me, and some spirituality. I don't know what it's going to look like. I love Joan Didion. I love the way she writes about the city in California. I don't know what it's going to be. And then my goddaughter is always like, well, you need to make music to accompany. You need to make like autobiographical, like story record to go along with it that tells these stories, the stories that you tell me about your family. If you can put them to music, I think would be really powerful. So I don't know, but I have really bad ADHD and a lot of procrastination issues.
Yeah, I hear you.
And so I will make a song cycle or something conceptual every 25 years. So I don't know if I have that much time now. So it's going to have to be quicker than that. Because I made Life is Sweet, which was my last song cycle. And then I made La Vita Nuova 5 years ago. And that was like 25-year gap. Oof. I mean, I made albums in between, but they weren't like conceptual pieces. They were more kind of piecing together old demos and cover songs and writing with my husband. And so I don't know. But, sometimes I'm like, I'm good. I've done it, and the music business is so weird. It's like you put something out and it just disappears. So
how do you mean?
Well, like for instance, I made the album of my career 5 years ago. Like I'm more proud of it than anything I've ever done. It nearly killed me to make it. I mean, I set an academic task for myself to write like line poetry and romance poetry and reading Dante and reading Swinburne and reading Keats and Tennyson and and like just like had like this death in Venice like vision of youth that almost killed me, and catapulted me into this like midlife crisis record that was really intense. And it was also like a psychic awakening. And it was really hard to write. And it's really lyrical. It was really hard to sing. And I composed all the strings and horns for like a 19-piece orchestra. And I don't read music. So I had to do it all on the keyboard. And it took months and months and months.
Oof.
And, I think it's like the best thing I've ever done. And also the reviews were kind of in agreement a little bit in that regard. Not here. The only thing I got was a Pitchfork, which was really nice. But in the UK, Europe, France, Scandinavia, like really, really beautiful academic pieces on the album, especially in France. Like people really appreciated it. It was important to a lot of people who like my music. And then COVID happened. Practically the week the album came out. And I was in London and it locked down.
Oh.
And I'm seeing the reviews come in every day. The PR people are sending me this review, that review, Financial Times, Forbes, Guardian, whatever, and I'm like, okay, well, people like it, but now what? And I was supposed to do this gig in London and, and I was really excited about it. And then we had to cancel it. And then I was thinking I would tour it a little bit. I don't really tour anymore, but like any kind of touring I might have done for it, that wasn't going to happen.
Oh.
So it just kind of, okay. And then I came back here and, now the other day, I don't know what compelled me. The weirdest thing happened, but like Chris and the Queens, I don't know if you know Chris and the Queens, they're like they're like a French punk band. They're beloved. And they put a record out practically the same week as my album La Vita Nuova.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called La Vita Nuova. And it was a total coincidence.
What?
And yeah, and it's a reference to Dante's book, La Vita Nuova.
Okay.
And my goddaughter had done some gigs with Chris and the Queens. And I asked her about it because she knows Chris. I was like, what is going on? So the total coincidence, what is going on? And she just said, well, no, she just was really, I remember her talking to me about the concept for the album and Dante and everything. So it's just a wild, one of those weird, wild things where it just happened, And so I thought, because I'm really proud of this album. I really think it's great, blah, 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 probably my best work. So I was Googling something, I don't remember. And I was like, oh, I wonder what happens if you Google La Vita Nuova. So I Googled it and then the Dante stuff comes up. But then the first thing that comes up is the Chris and the Queens album. And it's basically all you see.
Oh, man.
So it's like, it's not even really, if you continue down a little bit, then you see, some reviews of my record or whatever. But I'm like, okay, so why even make music? Why even make a record? Why work so hard? Why do that? Why lock myself into a room and write, classical compositions for strings and horns and everything else? And I remember it was a really hot summer. I don't have air conditioning. And I was just sweating in my office, writing these string lines and these horn lines. And I had like an infestation of book lice, which are these little tiny bugs that fly around the computer and like go onto the computer screen and go onto the keyboard. And it was so creepy. Talk about sci-fi or creep show or whatever. when who is it? I can't remember the actor, but that one episode in Creepshow where he's covered in roaches. I mean, it wasn't like that. It wasn't like that, but these little tiny bugs were everywhere. And I was just like, I don't care. I wouldn't even brush them off because I was so engrossed in writing these strings, And I'm like, why put myself through that again when nobody cares and there's no music business,
That's the truth.
And it's sort of like, I'm kind of enjoying retirement. I sort of like just not having any pressure and not really doing anything, but just kind of taking care of my dog, taking care of myself, going to therapy, going for walks, doing my Pilates, taking care of my goddaughter who lives in London, but we still talk constantly. She's really close. She comes to see me, and these are the most important things in my life, and I don't know if that I want to interrupt it with like the torture of being an artist.
Well, that's interesting. That's fair enough, though. That's fair. Of course, it does beg the question. I've asked everybody, and based on this conversation right now, I know the answer, but I would be remiss for anyone listening if I didn't ask. Will you do any live performances behind this Lone Justice record?
I mean, I hate, and I feel really bad in a way because the record company did sort of promote this as a reunion, which I thought was a little bit naughty. It got people's hopes up,
Yeah.
And it's not a new Lone Justice record. I mean, it is in that nobody's heard it.
Yes.
But it was recorded piecemeal over the last 25, 30 years. So it's sort of like, I mean, the only reunion really is me and Ryan and Marvin hang out and we love each other and we'll always be family. They'll always be my brothers, but I don't see doing anything like that.
I figured, and that's fair. But I know that was one question I got from a few people.
Yeah, a lot of people want to know, but I think people kind of stopped asking because they figure it's also Don being gone and stuff. It's sort of like, and it's it's weird for me as well because like the only Lone Justice songs I do in my solo shows are the ones from the second album. So I do "You Are the Light" sometimes. So like, I don't even know if, and that's not even really a Lone Justice record because it's not Marvin and Ryan and Don,
right? Right.
So it's hard to know where the Lone Justice thing fits into my sort of grown-up career. But apart from, I love this record,
Oh, for sure. And speaking of love, on the topic of love, I think it's universal. Everyone loves. I Will Always Love You. Your interpretation on that is just a banger, as the kids are wont to say.
Gosh, it's so funny when I'd completely forgotten that I'd recorded it.
If I should stay, I would only be in your way, so I'll go. But I know I'll think of you every step of the way. I will always love you. I will always love you. Bittersweet memories, that's all I am taking with me. Goodbye, please don't cry. We both know I'm
And so when Marvin played me the album and that came on, I was like, oh, no, 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 we don't. No, we don't. I was like, are you kidding me? We can't release this. Are you kidding me? No, no, no. And he's like, just listen, just listen, just listen. You know, and I thought, oh, wow, that's really audacious. Like, talk about punk rock, like to cover that song. That's really like bratty. Like, that's really bratty. But then I thought to myself, you know, here I am, I'm 60 years old. What do I care? The only person's opinion I care about in regards to me covering I Will Always Love You is Dolly's. And I know she'll love it. So what do I care? I don't care. Because I know Dolly's going to love it. And then she's the only opinion that matters to me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I hope you find some peace in knowing that everyone that I know has heard it loves it.
Okay, good. So more than just Dolly.
There's one live song on the record.
Yeah, that one I can't listen to. My voice is a little too hysterical.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not my favorite. It's yeah. It's a little bit like when I hear that, I kind of go, oh, turn it down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair
it's
enough.
A little frenetic and a little squeaky for me. But that's the only one that's not my favorite. Everything else I love. Love, 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 love.
Yeah. There's nary a bad song on here.
Well, it's interesting because I, for whatever reason, because I've grown kind of away from making country music and listening to it all the time. In fact, when I'm relaxing, like going for a long walk, I listen to a lot of disco and 70s R&B and 80s R&B. Like that's the music that I love now to just relax to or whatever, and classical music and stuff like that. But I had not seen the Ken Burns country doc.
Oh my God.
So I hadn't seen it. And my husband was like, when he started watching it, he was just like, it's the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. I'm telling you, just take the time, just do it. You're going to love it.
Yeah.
And I don't know when, but it was about maybe a year and a half or a year ago. I watched it and I was just completely riveted. And the thing that made me the most excited about it was I knew every song and I was singing along and the lyrics came back to me. And it was because of all that time that Ryan and I had spent devouring the encyclopedia of early music and country and bluegrass and hillbilly and all that, Jimmy Rogers and Hank Williams and all the, Nashville sound, George Jones and Waylon and, the Billy Sherrill stuff, and just knew every song. And the other thing that obviously the thing is beautifully made and incredible.
Of course.
Is the authenticity of every artist that was, a part of it, that was, reflected in the show, every single one, and how their lives were their music and their music was their lives. And again, I didn't want to make it about me, but I'm an egotistical artist. I'm like, I'm like, how dare I ever even try to do this, to make this music, to be a part of this pantheon of people? And how is it that I'm a talking head in a video in the Country Music Hall of Fame Museum exhibit on the country rock scene in LA? Like, how am I allowed? Like, how did that happen? I grew up in freaking Beverly Hills. I went to Beverly High. I was a theater major. Lone Justice was almost like a theater piece for me. I was like acting. I'm not a hillbilly, and I just was flooded with this like shame of like, we're not worthy, like literally, seriously, like, and I started to kind of make peace with it in ways that were unusual. Like, for instance, my grandmother who partly raised me, whose home I live in, was one of 17 kids, the daughter of a homesteader. Her mom was First Nations and colonial Spanish. She was the eldest. She took, they lived in the hills in California in Ritchie Canyon. My grandfather, my great grandfather, they used to call him the professor because he was the proprietor of this mineral spring. And he got all this knowledge from the local tribe who bottled the water and helped him figure out what was in it. And then he sent it off to like this really fancy chemist in Rhode Island to have the minerals analyzed. And apparently it was really potent stuff. And it actually is very healing. And so he would go around in a wagon to the Colton County Fair and all the county fairs as like a medicine showman selling this water. But he believed in it, and it really did have healing properties. And my grandmother used to give me the minerals when I was a kid. And, she was in a band with her brothers and sisters, and they would perform in the back of this wagon, and so I'm like, okay, well, maybe I am kind of country. And then, when I did Dwight Yoakam's show on Sirius, and we sat for like 3 hours and talked about California country and the Bakersfield Sound and Rose Maddox and the sharecroppers coming to California, barefoot. And, and also we talked about the Hollywood sound, the country sound in Hollywood, and Ricky Nelson, who was also a Beverly Hills kid who invented rockabilly pop. So I'm like, okay, I started to feel a little bit better about being a part of like, country music, sort of whatever, the pantheon of country music. And so then when it was time to listen to this record and, Marvin pressed play, I was like, oh, okay, I think it's all right.
Oh, for sure. You were definitely a part of that tapestry.
So it was like it took a lot for me to get here and to not feel like an asshole who was appropriating something, but I was also raised in born again church and speaking in tongues and getting knocked down on the Holy Ghost. And
wait, what? Really?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That stuff has always intrigued me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because, my parents joined a charismatic church when I was a kid. And first it was a Southern Baptist church locally that was really old fashioned, where I was baptized in a tank by a pastor from Iowa in fishing waders, at 8 years old. So, and that was really old timey. And we did all the old timey hymns, and that was in the 70s, and they had like potlucks. And then my parents joined a sort of hippie charismatic church. And there were a lot of Bible studies around Beverly Hills, and it was kind of like a cult. But we would also go to like the Black churches, and my mom had like a prayer group with all these Black ladies that were prayer ladies, and they brought down the Holy Ghost on me and gave me my tongues language. And, and we would go to like, Crenshaw Christian Center and stuff, and they would have like people come in from out of town and do like, like kind of like revival type church stuff. And you would always go up to get the Holy Ghost, and it would knock you over, stuff like that. And so, my dad was doing volunteer work at a Baptist rescue mission downtown. And it was like daddy at work day. And I don't know, I ended up down there with him in Skid Row. And it was a really old timey mission, like probably from the 30s. And it still had these Turner Burn murals on the walls. And that was where the concept of soap, soup, and salvation came from. So I don't know, LA is a really interesting place. There's a lot of cultures here, a lot of mix of stuff. And my family is really interesting. They've been here a long, 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 long time. And, so in some ways, I kind of do have a little bit of a gothic country kind of shadow in the back of who I am as a sort of, fancy retiree.
Now, was there any sort of snake wrestling going on?
No, no snake stuff. No snake stuff, but some exorcism stuff. Some exorcism stuff. In fact, I was definitely, they tried to cast him out of me. They did when I was young, really young, like 14. Because I was so charismatic and energetic and had a lot of curiosity, and I would always tell my mom everything, and and also mention to her that I was attracted to a girl at school. And so then that turned into like not conversion therapy, but that was definitely one of the demons that got brought up in the prayer group that day when they were trying to cast him out of me.
Is that something that's so important to you, religion? Or spirituality?
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself religious because of what religion represents.
Right.
But it's my spiritual life is extraordinarily complicated. I don't want to sound like a weirdo, but I practice a lot of varying spiritual sort of ritual stuff regularly. So I was on my way to becoming an atheist because my husband's an existentialist. He's not an atheist. He's quite devout in some ways, but I was kind of feeling like there's nothing. It's blackness when you die. It's all random. It's all chaos. There's no meaning. There's no higher power. And I had a psychic awakening and I couldn't refute what happened to me. And it was profound. And my whole life changed. And I started studying, I started practicing. I started studying the occult. I started studying esotericism, Western mystery school stuff, Hermeticism, Hermetic Kabbalah. I got a mentor who's an extraordinary teacher here in LA. I became sort of an initiate of her lodge. It weirdly studying the occult and studying magic got me back into Christianity.
Okay.
I started speaking in tongues again and using it in my magic work. I use a talking board every day of my life. It's part of my spiritual guidance. My guides, my angels, my dead, my ancestors all communicate with me on a talking board, including Jesus Christ.
Oh, wow.
So it's, and I'm also a medium.
Wow.
So my spiritual life is pretty rich. I'm very lazy in my studies. I tried to be a really good student, but because of my ADHD and because of all these things, I tend to be a little bit lazy when it comes to study. But I want to get back to it because the teacher that I was studying under has a really beautiful place here in LA where they're constantly having classes and lectures and groups. And I mean, if you wanted to, you could go every day. It's called 22 Teachings, and you could go every day and go to a class or have a lecture or, and so it's here for me. I just need to get back on the broomstick.
Speaking of that, we interviewed Orinda Fink a while back, and she just released a book. She was part of Azure Ray, make sure I pronounce it correctly, Azure Ray. And her book is called The Witch's Daughter. It's not a rock and roll memoir. It's all about how she grew up in the South in the home of a witch.
Mm-hmm.
And her own spiritual journey towards and how that entangled in her life. It's a very, very fascinating story.
My mother's side is what I have a cunning bloodline, which is on my mother's side going back. And I traced it all the way on Ancestry. I traced my mother's side all the way back to Ipswich, England in the 1640s. They left and came to New England.
Mm-hmm.
And around the 1640 in Ipswich, around that area of England was right around the time of the Bury St. Edmunds witch trials, which was kind of like the Salem witch trials of the UK, Witchmaster General. And those are all stories about the Bury St. Edmunds witch trials. So what it looks like is my ancestors left around that time and came to New England. So it was kind of like, we got to get out of here, And, my grandmother was into the occult, and that's my mother's mother. And then my mom was a charismatic Christian who did, I believe that a lot of the stuff that's practiced in the charismatic Christian church is pre-Christian magic, which is ancestral magic. So speaking in tongues, the laying on of hands, prophecy, slaying people in the spirit, all of that stuff is all the same stuff. It's just the Protestant church got a hold of it and turn it into a charismatic Christian. But it's, it's magic. It's all the same stuff. It's channeling, the ancestors and the basic thought forms that, make us faithful and make us practice in a spiritual way and pray and whatever you want to call it, but to me, it's all the same stuff.
Yeah. Now we're inching up on an hour. I have one last question for you, Maria. We have a Substack following. I have a Substack newsletter and we have a following. And about a month ago, somebody asked what we're listening to. And I'm like, I'm listening to a lot of Lone Justice. And a number of people were like, I love Lone Justice. I love Lone Justice. And I said, well, I'm trying to arrange an interview with, Marvin, Ryan, and Maria. If you have a question, let me know. I'd be happy to ask it. And one guy wrote back with a question. So with your permission, I'd like to ask you that question.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome.
Okay. Question. Do you think things would have been different artistically and commercially if the four of you had stayed together between the first and second album?
Okay, so do I think things would have been what if we'd stayed together?
Different? Artistically and commercially.
If we'd stayed together?
Yeah, if you'd stayed together.
I mean, it's hard to answer that because there's no way we were going to stay together.
Yeah.
Because Marvin was so unhappy with the way he was treated by the record company, etc. It was like they didn't even want him to write with me anymore because they wanted me to branch out and write with bigger songwriters.
Oof.
And I think Ryan felt like the project was pretty much taken away from him because it was really, he was the one who called me and said, hey, do you want to put a band together? Do you know what I mean? So it was like, he was the guy that made the phone call to me to put the band together. And he was kind of being phased out. And so it's hard to know. I mean, because I don't think we would have been able to stay together. It was just one of those things. We were just torn apart.
Yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
I mean, I sort of think of the Vought tapes, which is a demo that was released several years ago. I tend to think the Vought tapes as the first Lone Justice record, really, and the Gaffin Lone Justice record being like the second Lone Justice record, if that makes sense.
It does. It does make sense.
And then this one is the third one.
And everything's better on a third record. I have a third album theory.
Oh, interesting.
And this just cements it.
Well, my third solo album is one of my favorite solo albums. So
it's the rules of three.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Well, Maria, I won't take up any more of your time. We're at an hour. I thank you so much. It was lovely talking to you. And
it was lovely.
I learned an awful lot. So thank you.
Thank you. And I hope you get another doggy.
I will. I promise.
I'm gonna put a nice prayer of intention in the universe for you to find the perfect little friend.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I will take it. All right, Maria. Have a good night.
Okay. God bless.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Our thanks to Maria for making the time to chat with us. Special thanks to Jenna Jones at Fire Records.
This episode of Centre Stage was written and produced by Keith R. Higgins. The show was recorded at Thunderlove Studio, where it was engineered by
Daphne Morris,
with help from
Penetration,
edited by
Vic Titball,
with help from
Clem Fandango.
Our theme song is Cynical by Jaguar on Mars. You can stream Jaguar on Mars wherever you stream your favorite music. The songs you heard during this podcast were Skull and Crossbones, Rattlesnake Mama, Alabama Baby, and I Will Always Love You. All of these songs can be found on the Viva Lone Justice album, which is out now. Be sure to check out the Lone Justice Bandcamp page. You can stream Lone Justice wherever you stream your favorite music. Please remember to support independent music.
Original music by Mike Pellegrino.
If you like what you've heard, please remember to subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps other people find the podcast. Thanks for listening.
Grazie.
Bailey Leaf,
Rob Janicki, Mike Pellegrino, Farina Vella,
S.W. Loudon,
Michael Janicki, Fate and Janaki.
This show's executive producer is Lulu McGillicuddy and is in the loving memory of
Lucius Thunderwells.
And now, until we meet again next time, I remain as always obediently yours.
Abandoned Albums is a production of Paw Print Media.